Section 35 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 9th night of the month. When the night came, the king sat private in his chamber, and sending after the wazir, sought of him the story. And he said, Hear, O august king, the tale of the simpleton husband. There was once in olden time a foolish man and an ignorant, who had abounding wealth, and his wife was a beautiful woman, who loved a handsome youth. The Chichis Bayo used to watch for her husband's absence, and come to her, and on this wise he abode a long while. One day of the days, as the woman was closeted with her lover, he said to her, O my lady and my beloved, an thou desire me and love me, give me possession of thy person, and satisfy my need in the presence of thy husband. Otherwise I will never again come to thee, nor draw near thee while I live my life. Now she loved him with exceeding love, and could not suffer his separation an hour, nor could endure to anger him. So when she heard his words, she said to him, Bismillah, so be it, in Allah's name. O my darling and coolth of mine eyes, may he not live who would vex thee? Quoth he, Today? And quoth she, Yes, by thy life, and made an appointment with him for this. When her husband came home, she said to him, I want to go a-pleasuring. And he said, With all my heart. So he went, till he came to a goodly place, abounding in vines and water, whither he carried her and pitched her a tent by the side of a tall tree. And she betook herself to a place alongside the tent, and made her there a sardab, in which she hid her lover. Then she said to her husband, I want to climb this tree. And he said, Do so. So she clomb it, and when she came to the tree-top, she cried out and slapped her face, saying, O thou lecher, are these thy lewd ways? Thou swearest faith to me, and thou liedest. And she repeated her speech twice and thrice. Then she came down from the tree, and rent her raiment, and said, O lecher, and these by thy dealings with me before my eyes? How dost thou when thou art absent from me? Quoth he, What aileth thee? And quoth she, I saw thee futter the woman before my very eyes. Cried he, Not so, by Allah, but hold thy peace till I go up and see. So he clomb the tree, and no sooner did he begin to do so, than out came the lover from his hiding place, and taking the woman by the legs, fell to shagging her. When the husband came to the top of the tree, he looked and beheld a man futtering his wife. So he called out, O whore, what doings are these? And he made haste to come down from the tree to the ground. But meanwhile the lover had returned to his hiding place, and his wife asked him, What sawest thou? And he answered, I saw a man shag thee. But she said, Thou liest, thou sawest not, and sayest this only by way of fantasy. The same they did 3 several times, and every time he clomb the tree the lover came up out of the underground place and mounted her, whilst her husband looked on, and she still said, Seest thou aught, O liar? Yes, would he answer, and came down in haste, but saw no one, and she said to him, By my life, look and speak naught but sooth. Then he cried to her, Arise, let us depart this place, for 'tis full of jinn and marids. Accordingly, they returned to their house and nighted there. And the man arose in the morning, assured that this was all but fantasy and fascination, and so the lover won his wicked will. Nor, O king of the age, continued the wazir, is this stranger than the story of the king and the tither. When the king heard this from the minister, he bade him go away, and he went. End of section 35. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida.
Section 36 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous, translated by Richard Francis Burton. Section 36. The 10th Night of the Month. When it was eventide, the king summoned the wazir and sought of him the story of the king and the tither. And he said, "Hear, O king, the tale of the unjust king and the tither. There was once a king of the kings of the earth who dwelt in a flourishing city, abounding in good, but he wronged its people and entreated them foully, so that he ruined the city, and he was named naught else but tyrant and oppressor. Now he was wont, whenas he heard of a violent man in another land, to send after him, to lure him with lucre to take service with him. And there was a certain tither who exceeded all other tithers in oppression of the people and foul dealing. So the king sent after him, and when he stood before him, he found him a man of mighty fine presence, and said to him, Thou hast been described to me, but I see thou surpassest the description. Set out to me some of thy doings and sayings, so I may be dispensed therewith from inquiring into the whole of thy case. Answered the other, With all my heart know, O king, that I oppressed the folk and people the land, whilst other than I ruined it and peopled it not. Now the king was leaning back, but presently he sat upright and said, Tell me of this. The tither replied, 'Tis well. I go to the man whom I purpose to tithe, and cozen him, and fain to be busied with certain business, so that I seclude myself therewith from the people. And meanwhile the man is squeezed with the foulest of extortion, till naught of money is left him. Then I appear, and he come into me, and questions arise concerning him, and I say, Indeed, I was ordered worse than this, for someone, may Allah curse him, hath slandered him to the king. Presently I take half of his good, and return him the rest publicly before the folk, and dismiss him to his house, in all honour and worship. And he garreth the money returned be carried before him, whilst he blesseth me, and all who are with him also bless me. So it's bruited abroad in the city that I have restored him to his monies, and he himself notifieth the like, to the intent that he may have a claim on me for the favour due to those who praise me. Then I seem to forget him till the year hath passed over him. On this wise I keep half his property. Then I seem to forget him till the year hath passed over him, when I send for him and recall to him somewhat of that which hath befallen aforetime, and require of him somewhat of money in secret. Accordingly he doth this, and hasteneth to his house, and forwardeth whatso I bid him with a contented heart. Then I send to another man, between whom and the first is empty, and lay hands upon him, and feign to the other man that it is he who hath slandered him to the king, and hath taken half of his good. And the people praise me. The king wondered at this, and at his wily dealing and clever contrivance, and made him controller of all his affairs and of his kingdom, and the land was placed under his governance. And he said to him, Take and people. One day the tither went out and saw an old man, a woodcutter, and with him wood. So he said to him, Pay a dirham tithe for thy load. Quoth the sheikh, Behold, thou killst me and killst my family. And quoth the tither, What? Who killeth the folk? And the oldster answered, An thou let me enter the city, I shall there sell the load for 3 dirhams, whereof I will give thee 1, and buy with the other 2 silvers what will support my family. But an thou press me for the tithe outside the city, the load will sell but for 1 dirham, and thou wilt take it, and I shall abide without food, I and my family. Indeed thou and I in this circumstance are like unto David and Solomon, on the twain be the peace. How so? Asked the tither, and the woodcutter answered, Do thou hear.
The story of David and Solomon.
Certain husbandmen once made complaint to David, on whom be the peace, against some sheep owners whose flocks had come down upon their crops by night, and had devoured them, and he bade value the crops, and that the shepherds should make good the damage. But Solomon, on whom be the peace, rose and said, Nay, but let the sheep be delivered to the husbandmen, so they may take their milk and wool till they have recouped the value of their crops. Then let the sheep return to their owners. Accordingly, David reversed his own decision, and caused execute that of Solomon. Yet was David no oppressor, but Solomon's judgment was the juster, and he showed himself therein better versed in jurisprudence and holy law. When the tither heard the old man's speech, he felt ruthful, and said to him, O Shaykh, I make thee a gift of that which is due from thee, and do thou cleave to me, and leave me not. So haply I may get of thee gain, which shall do away from me my wrongness, and guide me on the path of righteousness. So the old man followed him, and there met him another with a load of wood. Quoth the tither to him, Pay me that which thou owest me. And quoth he, Have patience with me till tomorrow, for I owe the hire of a house, and I will sell another load of fuel, and pay thee 2 days' tithe. But he refused him this, and the Shaykh said to him, An thou constrain him unto this, thou wilt compel him quit thy country, because he is a stranger here, and hath no domicile. And if he remove on account of 1 dirham, thou wilt forfeit of him 360 dirhams a year. Thus wilt thou lose the mickle in keeping with a little. Quoth the tither, Verily will I give him a dirham every month to the rent of his lodging. Then he went on, and presently there met him a third woodcutter, and he said to him, Pay thy due. But he said, I will pay thee a dirham when I enter the city, or take of me 4 daniks now. Quoth the tither, I will not do it. But the Shaykh said to him, Take of him the 4 daniks presently, for it is easy to take and hard to give back. Exclaimed the tither, By Allah, 'tis good. And he arose and hied on, crying out at the top of his voice, and saying, I have no power this day to do evil. Then he doffed his dress, and went forth wandering at a venture, repenting unto his Lord. Nor, continued the Wazir, is this story stranger than that of the robber who believed the woman, and sought refuge with Allah against falling in with her like, by reason of her cunning contrivance for herself. When the king heard this, he said to himself, Since the tither repented in consequence of the woodcutter's warnings, it behoveth I leave the Wazir in life, so I may hear the story of the robber and the woman. And he bade Ar-Rahman return to his lodging. End of section 36.
Section 37 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Chad Horner from Ballyclare in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night. Arabian Nights, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 11th night of the month. When the evening came and the king had taken his seat, he summoned the Wazir and required of him the story of the robber and the woman. Quoth the minister, Hear, O king, the tale of the robber and the woman. A certain robber was a cunning workman, and used not to steal aught, till he had wasted all that was with him. Moreover, he stole not from his neighbours, neither accompanied with any of the thieves, for fear lest some one should betray him, and his case become public. After this fashion he abode a great while in flourishing condition, and his secret was concealed, till Almighty Allah decreed that he broke in upon a beggar, a poor man whom he deemed rich. When he gained access to the house, he found naught, whereat he was wroth, and necessity prompted him to wake that man who lay asleep alongside of his wife. So he aroused him and said to him, Show me thy treasure. Now he had no treasure to show, but the robber believed him not, and was instant upon him with threats and blows. When he saw that he got no profit of him, he said to him, Swear by oath of divorce from thy wife that thou hast nothing. So he sware, and his wife said to him, Fie on thee, wilt thou divorce me? Is not the hoard buried in yonder chamber? Then she turned to the robber and conjured him to be weightier of blows upon her husband, till he should deliver to him the treasure, anent which he had forsworn himself. So he drubbed him with a grievous drubbing, till he carried him to a certain chamber, wherein she signed to him that the hoard was, and that he should take it up. So the robber entered, he and the husband, and when they were both in the chamber she locked on them the door, which was stout and strong, and said to the robber, Woe to thee, O fool, thou hast fallen into the trap, and now I have but to cry out, and the officers of police will come and take thee, and thou wilt lose thy life, O Satan. Quoth he, Let me go forth. And quoth she, Thou art a man, and I am a woman, and in thy hand is a knife, and I am afraid of thee. He cried, Take the knife from me. So she took it, and said to her husband, Art thou a woman, and he a man? Pain his neck nape with tunding, even as he tunded thee. And if he put out his hand to thee, I will cry out a single cry, and the policemen will come and take him and hew him in two. So the husband said to him, O thousand-horned, O dog, O dodger, I owe thee a deposit, wherefore thou hast duped me. And he fell to banishing him grievously with a stick of holm oak, whilst he called out to the woman for help, and prayed her to deliver him. But she said, Keep thy place till the morning, and thou shalt see queer things. And her husband beat him within the chamber till he killed him, and he swooned away. Then he left beating him, and when the robber came to himself, the woman said to her husband, O man, this house is on hire, and we owe its owners much money, and we have not. So how wilt thou do? And she went on to bespeak him thus. The robber asked, And what is the amount of the rent? The husband answered, 'Twill be 80 dirhams. And the thief said, I will pay this for thee, and do thou let me go my way. Then the wife inquired, O man, how much do we owe the baker and the greengrocer? Quoth the robber, What is the sum of this? And the husband said, 60 dirhams. Rejoined the other, That makes 200 dirhams. Let me go my way, and I will pay them. But the wife said, O my dear, and the girl groweth up, and needs must we marry her, and equip her, and do what else is needful. So the robber said to the husband, How much dost thou want? And he rejoined, 100 dirhams in a modest way. Quoth the robber, That maketh 300 dirhams. And the woman said, O my dear, when the girl is married, thou wilt need money for winter expenses, charcoal, and firewood, and other necessaries. The robber asked, What wouldest thou have? And she answered, 100 dirhams. He rejoined, Be it 400 dirhams. And she continued, O my dear, and O killeth of mine eyes, needs must my husband have capital on hand, wherewith he may buy goods, and open him a shop. Said he, How much will that be? And she, 100 dirhams. Quoth the robber, That maketh 500 dirhams. I will pay it, but may I be triply divorced from my wife if all my possessions amount to more than this, and they be the savings of 20 years. Let me go my way, so I may deliver them to thee. Cried she, O fool, how shall I let thee go thy way? Utterly impossible. Be pleased to give me a right token. So he gave her a token for his wife, and she cried out to her young daughter and said to her, Keep this store. Then she charged her husband to watch over the robber till she should return, and repairing to his wife, acquainted her with his case, and told her that her husband, the thief, had been taken and had compounded for his release at the price of 700 dirhams, and named to her the token. Accordingly she gave her the money, and she took it and returned to her house. By this time the dawn had dawned, so she let the thief go his way, and when he went out, she said to him, O my dear, when shall I see thee come and take the treasure? And he, O indebted one, when thou needest other 700 dirhams, wherewith to mend thy case, and that of thy children, and to pay thy debts. And he went out, hardly believing in his deliverance from her. Nor, continued the Wazir, is this stranger than the story of the 3 men and our Lord Isa. So the king bade him hie to his own home. End of section 37, recording by Chad Horner from Ballyclare in County Antrim, Northern Ireland.
Section 38 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 12th night of the month. When it was eventide, the king summoned the minister and bade him tell the promised tale. He replied, Hearing and obeying, give ear, O glorious king, to the tale of the 3 men and our Lord Isa. 3 men once went out questing treasure, and came upon a nugget of gold, weighing 50 mans. When they saw it, they took it upon their shoulders, and carried it till they drew near a certain city, when one of them said, Let us sit in the cathedral mosque, whilst one of us shall go and buy us what we may eat." So they sat down in the mosque, and one of them arose and entered the city. When he came therein, his soul prompted him to false his two fellows and get the gold to himself alone. Accordingly, he bought food and poisoned it. But when he returned to his comrades, they sprang upon him and slew him, in order that they might enjoy the gold without him. Then they ate of the poisoned food and died, and the gold lay cast down over against them. Presently, Isa bin Maryam, on whom be the peace, passed by, and seeing this, besought Allah Almighty for tidings of their case. So he told him what had betided them, whereat great was his surprise, and he related to his disciples what he had seen. Quoth one of them, "O Spirit of Allah, not resembleth this but my own adventure?" Quoth Isa, "How so?" And the other began to tell. The Disciples' Story. Once I was in such a city, where I hid 1,000 dirhams in a monastery. After a while, I went thither, and taking the money, bound it about my waist. Then I set out to return, and when I came to the Sahara waste, the carrying of the money was heavy upon me. Presently, I espied a horseman pushing on after me. So I waited till he came up, and said to him, "O rider, carry this money for me, and earn reward and recompense in heaven." Said he, "No, I will not do it, for I should tire myself and tire out my horse." Then he went on, but before he had gone far, he said in his mind, "An I take up the money, and put my steed to speed, and advance him, how shall he overtake me?" And I also said in my mind, "Verily I erred, for had he taken the money and made off, what could I have done?" Then he turned back to me and cried to me, "Hand over the money, that I may carry it for thee." But I replied to him, "That which hath occurred to thy mind hath occurred to mine also, so go thou, and go safe." Quoth Isa, on whom be the peace, "Had these done prudently, they had taken thought for themselves, but they unheeded the issues of events, for that whoso acteth cautiously is safe and winneth his wish, and whoso neglecteth precaution is lost and repenteth. Nor," continued the Wazir, "is this stranger or rarer than the story of the king, whose kingdom was restored to him and his wealth after he had become poor, possessing not a single dirham. When the king heard this, he said in himself, How like is this to my own story in the matter of the minister and his slaughter? Had I not used deliberation, I had done him dead." And he bade Al-Rawan hie to his own house. End of section 38. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida.
Section 39 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 13th night of the month. When the even evened, the king sent for the wazir to his sitting chamber, and bade him tell the promised tale. So he said, Hearkening in obedience, they relate, O king. The tale of the dethroned ruler whose reign and wealth were restored to him. There was once in a city of the cities of Al-Hind, a just king and a beneficent, and he had a wazir, a man of understanding, upright in his rede, and praiseworthy in his policy, a minister in whose hand was the handling of all the affairs of the realm. For he was firmly based on the sultan's favor and high in esteem with the folk of his time. And the king set great store by him, and entrusted himself to him in all his transactions, by reason of his excellent management of the lieges. And he had guards who were content with him and grateful to him. Now that king had a brother, who envied him and would lief have taken his place. And when he was aweary of looking for his death, and the term of his life seemed distant, he took counsel with certain of his partisans, and they said, The minister is the monarch's counselor, and but for this wazir, the king were kingdomless. So the pretender cast about for the ruin of the defender, but could find no means of furthering his design. And when the affair grew longsome upon him, he said to his wife, What deemest thou will Garas gain herein?
What is it?
I mean, in the matter of yonder minister, who inciteth my brother to worship with all his might, and biddeth him unto devoutness. And indeed the king dotteth upon his counsel, and establisheth him governor of all moneys and matters. True, but how shall we devise with him? I have a device, so thou wilt help me in that which I shall say to thee. Thou shalt have my help in whatsoever thou desirest. I mean to dig him a pit in the vestibule, and conceal it artfully. Accordingly, he did this, and when it was night, he covered the pit with a light covering, so that when the wazir trod upon it, it would give way under his tread. Then he sent to him and summoned him to the court in the king's name, and the messenger bade him enter by the private wicket way. So he came in alone, and when he stepped upon the covering of the pit, it caved in with him, and he fell to the bottom. Whereupon the king's brother fell to pelting him with stones. When the minister beheld what had betided him, he gave himself up for lost. So he stirred not for a while and lay still. The prince, seeing him make no sign, deemed him dead. So he took him forth, and wrapping him up in his robes, cast him into the surges of the sea in the middle night. When the wazir felt the water, he awoke from the swoon and swam for an hour or so, till a ship passed by him. Whereupon he shouted to the sailors, and they took him up. Now when the morning morrowed, the people went seeking for him, but found him not. And the king, learning this, was perplexed concerning his affair, and abode unknowing what so he should do. Then he sought for a minister to stand in his stead. And the king's brother said, I have for a wazir an efficient man. Said the king, Bring him to me. So he brought him a man whom he set at the head of affairs. But he seized upon the kingdom and threw the king in fetters, and made his brother king in lieu of him. The new ruler gave himself up to all manner of frowardness, whereat the folk murmured, and his minister said to him, I fear lest the Indians take the old king and restore him to the kingship, and we both come to ruin. So, if we seize him and cast him into the sea, we shall be at rest from him, and we will publish among the folk that he is dead. And they, agreeing upon this, took him up, and carrying him out to sea, cast him in. When he felt the water, he struck out, and ceased not swimming till he landed upon an island, where he tarried 5 days, finding nothing which he might eat or drink. But on the 6th day, when he despaired of his life, behold, there passed a ship. So he made signals to the crew, and they came and took him up, and fared on with him to an inhabited country, where they set him ashore, mother naked as he was. There, seeing a man seething, he sought guidance of him, and the husbandman asked, Art thou a foreigner? Yes, answered the king, and sat with him, and they talked. The peasant found him clever and quick-witted, and said to him, An thou beheld a comrade of mine, thou wouldst see him the like of what I see thee, for his case is even as thy case, and he is at this present my friend. Quoth the king, Verily, thou marked me long to look at him. Canst thou not bring us together, me and him? Quoth the husbandman, With joy and goodly gree. And the king sat with him till he had made an end of his seething, when he carried him to his homestead, and brought him in company with the other stranger. And behold, it was his wazir. When each saw other, the twain wept and embraced, and the sour wept for their weeping. But the king hid their affair, and said to him, This man is from my motherland, and he is as my brother. So they homed with the husbandman, and helped him for a hire, wherewith they supported themselves a long spell. Meanwhile, they sought news of their partial stead, and learned that which its people suffered of straitness and severity. One day there came a ship, and in it a merchant from their own country, who knew them and rejoiced in them with joy exceeding, and clad them in goodly clothing. He also acquainted them with the manner of the treachery that had been practiced upon them, and counseled them to return to their own land, they and he with whom they had made friends, assuring them that Almighty Allah would restore them to their former rank. So the king returned, and the folk joined themselves to him, and he fell upon his brother and his wazir, and took them and threw them into jail. Then he sat down again upon the throne of his kingship, whilst the minister stood between his hands, and they returned to their former estate. But they had not of worldly wealth. Presently the king said to his wazir, "How shall we continue tarrying in this city, and we thus poorly conditioned?" And he answered, "Be at thine ease, and have no concern." Then he singled out one of the soldiers, and said to him, "Send us thy service for the year." Now there were in the city 50,000 subjects, and in the hamlets and villages a like number. And the minister sent to each of these, saying, "Let each and every of you get an egg, and set it under a hen." They did this, and it was neither burden nor grievance to them. And when 20 days had passed by, each egg was hatched, and the wazir bade them pair the chickens, male with female, and rear them well. They did accordingly, and it was found a charge unto no one. Then they waited for them a while, and after this the minister asked of the chickens, and it was answered that they were become fowls. Furthermore, they brought him all their eggs, and he bade set them. And after 20 days there were hatched from each pair of them 30, or 25, or 15 chickens at the least. The wazir bade note against each man the number of chickens which pertained to him, and after 2 months he took the old partlets and cockerels, and there came to him from each man some half a score, and he left the young partlets with them. Even so he sent to the country folk, and let the cocks remain with them. Thus he got him whole broods of young poultry, and appropriated to himself the sale of the fowls. And on this wise he gained for him, in the course of a year, that which the kingly estate required of the king. And his affairs were set right for him by the cunning contrivance of the minister. And he caused the country to thrive, and dealt justly by his subjects, and returned to them all that he took from them, and lived a grateful and prosperous life. Thus right counsel and prudence are better than wealth, for that understanding profiteth at all time and seasons. Nor, continued the wazir, is this stranger than the story of the man whose caution slew him. When the king heard the words of his wazir, he wondered with the utmost wonder, and bade him retire to his lodging. End of section 39. Recorded by Isam al-Arabi.
Section 40 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 14th night of the month. When the minister returned to the presence, the king sought of him the story of the man whose caution slew him, and he said, "Hear, O auspicious king, the tale of the man whose caution slew him. There was once a man who was cautious exceedingly concerning himself, and he set out one day on a journey to a land abounding in wild beasts. The caravan wherewith he fared came by night to the gate of a city, but the warders would not open to them, for there were lions there. So they nighted without the walls. Now that man, of the excess of his caution, could not determine a place wherein he should pass the night, for fear of the wild beasts and reptiles. So he went about, seeking an empty stead wherein he might lie. At last, as there was a ruined building hard by, he climbed up onto a high wall, and ceased not clambering hither and thither, of the excess of his carefulness, till his feet betrayed him, and he slipped and fell to the bottom and died, whilst his companions arose in the morning safe and sound. Now, had he overmastered his wrongous rede, and had he submitted himself to fate and fortune, it had been safer and better for him. But he made light of the folk, and belittled their wit, and was not content to take example by them, for his soul whispered him that he was a man of wits, and he fancied that, an he abode with them, he would perish. So his folly cast him into perdition. Nor, continued the wazir, is this stranger than the story of the man who was lavish of his house and his provision to one he knew not. When the king heard this, he said, I will not separate myself from the folk and slay my minister. And he bade him hie to his own house. End of section 40.
Section 41 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous, translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 15th night of the month. When the evening evened, the king bade fetch the wazir and required of him the story. So he said, Hear, O king, the tale of the man who was lavish of his house and his provisions to one whom he knew not. There was once an Arab of high rank and noble presence, a model of magnanimity and exalted generosity, and he had brethren with whom he consorted and caroused, and they were wont to assemble by rotation at one another's homes. When it came to his turn, he gat ready in his house all manner of goodly meats, and pleasant and dainty drinks, and the fairest flowers, and the finest fruits, and he provided all kinds of instruments of music, and store of wondrous dicks and marvellous stories, and pleasant instances, and histories, and witty anecdotes, and verses, and what not else. For there was none among these with whom he was not wont to company, but enjoyed this in every goodly fashion. And the entertainment he provided contained all whereof each had need. Then he sallied forth in quest of his friends, and went round about the city, so he might assemble them, but he found none of them at home. Now in that town was a man of pleasant conversation and large generosity, a merchant of condition, young of years and bright of blee, who had come to that place from his own country with merchandise and great store and wealth galore. He took up his abode therein, and the town was pleasant to him, and he was large in lavishing, so that he came to the end of all this wealth, and there remained in his hand naught save what was upon him of raiment. So he left the lodging which had homed him in the days of his prosperity, after he had wasted that which was therein of furniture, and fell to finding refuge in the houses of the townfolk from night to night. One day he went wandering about the streets. He beheld a woman of the uttermost beauty and loveliness, and what he saw of her charms amazed him, and there happened to him what made him forget his sorry plight. She accosted him and jested with him, and he besought her of union and intimacy. So she consented to this, and said to him, Let us go to thy lodging. Herewith he repented, and was perplexed concerning his procedure, and grieved for that which must escape him of her company, by reason of the straitness of his hand, for that he had not a whit of spending money. But he was ashamed to say no, after he had sued and wooed her. Wherefore he went on before her, bethinking him how he should rid himself of her, and seeking some excuse which he might pull off on her, and gave not over going from street to street, till he entered one that had no issue, and saw at the farther end a door whereupon was a padlock. Then he said to her, Do thou excuse me, for my lad hath locked the door, and how shall we open it? Said she, O my lord, the padlock is worth only some 10 dirhams. And presently she tucked up her sleeves from forearms as they were crystal, and taking a stone smote the padlock and broke it, and opening the door said to him, Enter, O my lord. Accordingly he went in, committing his affair to Allah, to whom belong honor and glory. And she entered after him, and locked the door from within. They found themselves in a pleasant house, collecting all good and gladness, and the young man fared forward, till he came to the sitting chamber, and behold, it was furnished with the finest of furniture as hath before been set out. He seated himself and leant upon a cushion, while she put out her hand to her veil, and doffed it. Then she threw off her heavy outer clothes, till she was clad in the thinnest, which showed her charms, whereupon the young man embraced her, and kissed her, and enjoyed her, after which they washed with the Ghul ablution, and returned to their place. And he said to her, Know that I have little knowledge of what goeth on in my own house, for that I trust to my servant. So arise thou, and see what the lad hath made ready in the kitchen. Accordingly she arose, and going down into the kitchen, saw cooking pots over the fire, wherein were all manner of dainty viands, and first bread, and fresh almond cakes. So she set bread on a dish, and ladled down what she would from the pots, and brought it to him. They ate and drank and played, and made merry a while of the day. And as they were thus engaged, suddenly up came the master of the house, with his friends, whom he had brought with him, that they might converse together, as of wont. He saw the door open, and knocked a light knock, saying to his company, Have patience with me, for some of my family are come to visit me, Wherefore excuse belongeth first to Allah Almighty, and then to you. So they farewelled him, and fared their ways, whilst he rapped another light rap at the door. When the young man heard this, he changed colour, and the woman said to him, Methinks thy lad hath returned. He answered, Yes. And she arose, and opening the door to the master of the house, said to him, Where hast thou been? Indeed thy master is angry with thee. And he said, O my lady, I have not been, save about his business. Then he girt his waist with a kerchief, and entering, saluted the young merchant, who said to him, Where hast thou been? Quoth he, I have done thine errands. And quoth the youth, Go and eat, and come hither and drink. So he went away as he bade him, and ate. Then he washed hands, and returning to the sitting room, sat down on the carpet, and fell to talking with them, whereupon the young merchant's heart was heartened, and his breast broadened, and he applied himself to pleasure. They were all in joyance of life, and the most abounding pleasance, till a third part of the night was past, when the housemaster arose, and spreading them a bed, invited them to take their rest. So they lay down, and the youth wide awake, pondering their affair till daybreak, when the woman roused herself from sleep, and said to her companion, I wish to go. He farewelled her, and she departed, whereupon the master of the house followed her with a purse of silver, and gave it to her, saying, Blame not my lord, and made his excuse to her for his master. Then he returned to the youth, and said to him, Arise and come to the hammam. And he fell to shampooing his hands and feet, whilst the youth called down blessings on him, and said, O my lord, who art thou? Methinks there is not in the world the like of thee, no, nor a pleasanter in thy disposition. Then each of the twain acquainted the other with his case and condition, and they went to the bath, after which the master of the house conjured the young merchant to return with him, and summoned his friends. So they ate and drank, and he told them the tale, wherefore they thanked the housemaster and praised him, and their friendship was complete, while the young merchant abode in the town, till Allah made easy to him a means of travel, whereupon they farewelled him, and he departed. And this is the end of the tale. Nor, continued the Wazir, O king of the age, is this stranger than the story of the Richard, who lost his wealth and his wit. When the king heard the minister's story, it pleased him, and he bade him hie to his house. End of section 41.
Section 42 of The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 16th night of the month. When the evening evened, the king sat in his sitting chamber, and, sending for his wazir, bade him relate the story of the wealthy man, who lost his wealth and his wit. So he said, Hear, O king, the tale of the melancholist and the sharper. There was once a Richard hight Ajlan, the hasty, who wasted his wealth, and concern and chagrin gat the mastery of him, so that he became a melancholist, and lost his wit. There remained with him of his moneys about 20 dinars, and he used to beg alms of the folk, and whatso they gave him in charity he would gather together and add to the gold pieces that were left him. Now there was in that town a sharper, who made his living by roguery, and he knew that the melancholist had somewhat of money. So he fell to spying upon him, and ceased not watching him till he saw him put into an earthen pot that which he had with him of silvers, and enter a deserted ruin, where he sat down, as if to make water, and dug a hole, wherein he laid the pot, and covering it up, smoothed the ground as it had been. Then he went away, and the sharper came, and taking what was in the pot, restored it to its former place. Presently Aslan returned, with somewhat to add to his hoard, but found it not. So he bethought him of who had followed him, and remembered that he had found that sharper assiduous in sitting with him and questioning him. So he went in search of him, assured that he had taken the pot. and gave not overlooking for him till he saw him sitting. Whereupon he ran to him, and the sharper saw him. Then the melancholist stood within earshot, and muttered to himself, and said, In the pot are 60 ducats, and I have with me other 20 in such a place, and today I will unite the whole in the pot. When the sharper heard him say this to himself, muttering and mumbling, repeating and blundering in his speech, he repented him of having taken the sequins, and said, He will presently return to the pot, and find it empty. Wherefore that for which I am on the lookout will escape me, and meseemeth 'twere best I replace the dinars, so he may see them, and leave all which is with him in the pot, and I can take the whole. Now he feared to return to the pot at once, lest the melancholist should follow him to the place, and find nothing, and on this wise his arrangements be marred. So he said to him, O Aslan, I would have thee come to my lodging and eat bread with me. Thereupon the melancholist went with him to his quarters, and he seated him there, and going to the market, sold somewhat of his clothes, and pawned somewhat from his house, and bought the best of food. Then he betook himself to the ruin, and replacing the money in the pot, buried it again. After which he returned to his lodging, and gave the melancholist to eat and drink, and they went out together. The sharper walked away and hid himself, lest his guest should see him, whilst Aslan repaired to his hiding place and took the pot. Presently the sharper returned to the ruin, rejoicing in that which he deemed he should get, and dug in the place, but found naught, and knew that the melancholist had outwitted him. So he began buffeting his face for regret, and fell to following the other whitherso he went, to the intent that he might win what was with him. But he failed in this, because the melancholist knew what was in his mind, and was assured that he spied upon him, so he kept watch over himself. Now, had the sharper considered the consequences of haste, and that which is begotten of loss therefrom, he had not done on such wise. Nor, continued the Wazir, is this tale, O King of the age, rarer or stranger or daintier than the story of Kalbas and his wife, and the learned man, and that which befell between the three. When the king heard this story, he left his purpose of putting the minister to death, and his soul bade him to continue him on life, so he ordered him off to his house. End of section 42. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida. Section 43 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 17th night of the month. When the evening evened, the king summoned the minister, and as soon as he presented himself, he required of him the story. So he said, Hearkening and obedience, hear, O august king. The tale of Kalbas and his wife and the learned man. There was once a man called Kalbas, who was a fulsome fellow, a calamity, notorious for this note, and he had a charming wife, renowned for beauty and loveliness. A man of his townsfolk fell in love with her, and she also loved him. Now Kalbas was a wily wight, and full of guile, and there was in his neighborhood a learned man, to whom the folk used to resort every day, and he told them histories, and admonished them with moral instances, and Kalbas was wont to be present in his assembly, for the sake of making a show before the folk. This learned man also had a wife, famed for comeliness and seemlihead, and quickness of wit, and understanding, and the lover sought some device whereby he might manage to meet Kalbas's wife. So he came to him, and told him as a secret what he had seen of the learned man's wife, and confided to him that he was in love with her, and besought his assistance in this. Kalbas told him that she was known as a model of chastity and continence, and that she exposed herself not to ill doubts. But the other said, I cannot renounce her, in the first place because the woman inclineth to me, and coveteth my wealth, and secondly, because of the greatness of my fondness for her, and naught is wanting but thy help. Quoth Kalbas, I will do thy will. And quoth the other, Thou shalt have of me every day 2 silvern dirhams, on condition that thou sit with the learned man, and that when he riseth from the assembly, thou speak a word which shall notify to me the breaking up of the meeting. So they agreed upon that, and Kalbas entered and sat in the session, whilst the lover was assured in his heart that the secret was safe and secure with him, wherefore he rejoiced and was content to pay the 2 dirhams. Then Kalbas used to attend the learned man's assembly, whilst the other would go in to his wife and be very much with her, on such wise as he thought good, till the learned man arose from his meeting, and when Kalbas saw that he proposed rising, he would speak a word for the lover to hear, whereupon he went forth from the wife of Kalbas, who knew not that doom was in his own house. But when the learned man saw Kalbas do the same thing every day, he began to suspect him, especially on account of that which he knew of his bad name, and suspicion grew upon him. So one day he resolved to advance the time of his rising, ere the wonted hour, and hastened up to Kalbas, seized him, and said to him, By Allah, an thou say a single syllable, I will do thee a damage. Then he went in to his wife, with Kalbas in his grip, and behold, she was sitting, as of her wont, nor was there about her aught of suspicious or unseemly. The learned man bethought him a while of this, then made for Kalbas's house, which adjoined his own, still holding his man, and when they entered, they found the young lover lying on the bed with Kalbas's wife. Whereupon quoth the learned man to him, O accursed, the doom is with thee and in thine own house. So Kalbas divorced his wife and went forth, fleeing, and returned not to his own land. This then, continued the Wazir, is the consequence of lewdness, for whoso purposeth in himself wile and perfidious guile, they get possession of him, and had Kalbas conceived of himself that dishonour and calamity which he conceived of the folk, there had betided him nothing of this. Nor is this tale rare, and curious though it be, stranger or rarer than the story of the devotee whose husband's brother accused her of lewdness. When the king heard this, wonderment gat hold of him, and his admiration for the Wazir redoubled. So he bade him hie to his home, and returned to him on the morrow, according to his custom. So the minister withdrew to his lodging, where he passed the night and the ensuing day. End of section 43. Recording by George Diaz of Spring Hill, Florida.
Section 44 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lisa Murphy, Richmond, Virginia. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 18th night of the month. When the evening evened, the king summoned the Wazir, and required of him the story. So he said, "'Tis well. Hear, O king, the tale of the devotee accused of lewdness. There was once a man of Nishabar, who, having a wife of the uttermost beauty and piety, yet was minded to set out on the pilgrimage. So, before leaving home, he commended her to the care of his brother, and besought him to aid her in her affairs, and further her wishes till he should return, for the brothers were on the most intimate terms. Then he took ship and departed, and his absence was prolonged. Meanwhile, the brother went to visit his brother's wife at all times and seasons, and questioned her of her circumstances, and went about her wants. And when his calls were prolonged, and he heard her speech and saw her face, the love of her gat hold upon his heart, and he became passionately fond of her, and his soul prompted him to evil. So he besought her to lie with him, but she refused, and showed him how foul was his deed, and he found him no way to win what he wished. Wherefore he wooed her with soft speech and gentle ways. Now she was righteous in all her doings, and never swerved from one saying so. When he saw that she consented not to him, he had no doubts but that she would tell his brother when he returned from his journey. And quoth he to her, "And thou consent not to whatso I require of thee. I will cause a scandal to befall thee, and thou wilt perish. Quoth she, Allah, extolled and exalted be He, judge betwixt me and thee, and know that, should thou hew me limb from limb, I would not consent to that thou biddest me to do. His ignorance of womankind persuaded him that she would tell her spouse, so he betook himself of his exceeding despite to a company of people in the mosque, and informed them that he had witnessed a man commit adultery with his brother's wife. They believed his word and documented his charge and assembled to stone her. Then they dug her a pit outside the city, and seating her therein stoned her till they deemed her dead when they left her. Presently a shakir of a village passed by the pit, and finding her alive carried her to his house and cured her of her wounds. Now he had a youthful son, who, as soon as he saw her, loved her, and besought her of her person. But she refused, and consented not to him, whereupon he redoubled in love and longing, and his case prompted him to suborn a youth of the people of his village, and agree with him that he should come by night and take somewhat from his father's house, and that, when he was seized and discovered, he should say that she was his accomplice in this, and avouch that she was his mistress and had been stoned on his account in the city. Accordingly he did this, and coming by night to the villager's house, stole therefrom goods and clothes, whereupon the owner awoke, and seizing the thief, pinioned him straitly, and beat him to make him confess. And he confessed against the woman that she was a partner in the crime, and that he was her lover from the city. The news was bruited abroad, and the citizens assembled to put her to death. But the shakith with whom she was forbade them, and said, I brought this woman hither, coveting the recompense of Allah, and I know not the truth of that which is said of her, and will not empower any to hurt or harm her. Then he gave her 1,000 dirhams by way of alms, and thrust her forth of the village. As for the thief, he was imprisoned for some days, after which the folk interceded for him with the old man, saying, This is a youth, and indeed he erred, and he released him from his bonds. Meanwhile the woman went out haphazard, and donning a devotee's dress, fared on without ceasing, till she came to a city, and found the king's deputies dunning the townsfolk for the tribute out of season. Presently she saw a man, whom they were pressing for the tribute, so she asked of his case, and being acquainted with it, paid down the 1,000 dirhams for him, and delivered him from the bastinado, whereupon he thanked her and those who were present. When he was set free, he walked with her, and besought her to go with him to his dwelling. Accordingly she accompanied him thither, and supped with him, and passed the night. When the dark hours gloomed on him, his soul prompted him to evil, for that which he saw of her beauty and loveliness, and he lusted after her, and required her of her person. But she rejected him, and threatened him with Allah the Most High, and reminded him of that which she had done with him of kindness, and how she had delivered him from the stick and its disgrace. However, he would not be denied, and when he saw her persistent refusal of herself to him, he feared lest she should tell the folk of him. So when he arose in the morning, he wrote on a paper what he would of forgery and falsehood, and going up to the Sultan's palace said, I have an advisement for the king. So he bade admit him, and he delivered him the writ he had forged, saying, I found this letter with the woman, the devotee, the ascetic, and indeed she is a spy, a secret informer against the sovereign to his foe. And I deem the king's due more incumbent on me than any other claim, in warning him to be the first duty, for that he untieth in himself all the subjects, and but for the king's assistance the lieges would perish. Wherefore I have brought thee good counsel. The king gave credit to his word, and sent with him who should lay hands upon the devotee and do her to death, but they found her not. As for the woman, when the man went out from her, she resolved to depart, so she fared forth, saying to herself, There is no wayfaring for me in woman's habit. Then she donned men's dress, such as is worn of the pious, and set out and wandered over the earth. Nor did she cease wandering till she entered a certain city. Now the king of that city had an only daughter, in whom he gloried and whom he loved. And she saw the devotee, and deeming her a pilgrim youth, said to her father, I would fain have this youth take up his lodging with me, so I may learn of him lyre and piety and religion." Her father rejoiced in this, and commanded the pilgrim to take up his abode with his daughter in his palace. So they were in one place, and the princess was strenuous to the uttermost in continence and chastity and nobility of mind, and magnanimity and devotion. But the ignorant tattled anent her, and the folk of the realm said, "The king's daughter loveth the pilgrim youth, and he loveth her." Now the king was a very old man, and destiny decreed the ending of his life term. So he died, and when he was buried, the lieges assembled, and many were the sayings of the people, and of the king's kinsfolk and officers, and they counselled together to slay the princess and the young pilgrim, saying, "This fellow dishonoureth us with yonder whore, and none accepteth shame save the base." So they fell upon them and slew the king's daughter in her mosque, without asking her of aught. Whereupon the pious woman, who they deemed a youth, said to them, "Woe to you, O miscreants! You have slain the pious lady." Quoth they, "O thou fulsome fellow, dost thou bespeak us thus? Thou lovest her, and she loved thee, and we will assuredly slay thee." And quoth she, "Allah forfend, indeed, the affair is the clear reverse of this." They asked, "What proof hast thou of that?" And she answered, "Bring me women." They did so, and when the matrons looked on her, they found her a woman. As soon as the townsfolk saw this, they repented of that they had done, and the affair was grievous to them. So they sought pardon of Allah, and said to her, "By the virtue of him whom thou servest, do thy crave pardon for us." Said she, "As for me, I may no longer tarry with you, and I am about to depart from you." Then they humbled themselves before her, and shed tears, and said to her, "We conjure thee, by the might of Allah and the Most High, that thou take upon thyself the rule of the realm and the lieges." But she refused and drew her back, whereupon they came up to her and wept, and ceased not supplicating her, till she consented and undertook the kingship. Her first commandment to them was that they bury the princess and build over her a dome, and she abode in that palace, worshipping the Almighty and dealing judgment between the people with justice, and Allah, extolled and exalted be He, vouchsafed her, for the excellence of her piety and her patience and renunciation, the acceptance of her prayers, so that she sought not aught of him, to whom belong might and majesty, but he granted her petition, and her fame was bruited abroad in all lands. Accordingly, the folk resorted to her from all parts, and she used to pray Allah, to whom belong might and majesty, for the oppressed, and the Lord granted him relief, and against his oppressor, and he brake him asunder. And she prayed for the sick, and they were made sound. And in this goodly way she tarried a great space of time. So fared it with the wife. But as for her husband, when he returned from the pilgrimage, his brother and the neighbors acquainted him with the affair of his spouse, whereat he was sore concerned, and suspected their story, for that which he knew of her chastity and prayerfulness, and he shed tears for the loss of her. Meanwhile she prayed to Almighty Allah, that he would stablish her innocence in the eyes of her spouse and the folk, and he sent down upon her husband's brother a sickness so sore that none knew a cure for him. Wherefore he said to his brother, "In such a city is a devotee, a worshipful woman, and a recluse whose prayers are accepted. So do thou carry me to her, that she may pray for my healing, and Allah, to whom belong might and majesty, may give me ease of this disease." Accordingly he took him up and journeyed with him till they came to the village where dwelt the Shakya, the grey-beard who had rescued the devout woman from the pit, and carried her to his dwelling, and healed her in his home. Here they halted and lodged with the old man, who questioned the husband of his case, and that of his brother, and the cause of their journey. And he said, "I purpose to go with my brother, this sick wight, to the holy woman, her whose petitions are answered, so she may pray for him, and Allah may heal him by the blessing of her orisons." Quoth the villager, "By Allah, my son is in parlous plight for sickness, and we have heard that this devotee prayeth for the sick, and they are made sound. Indeed, the folk counsel me to carry him to her, and behold, I will go in company with you." And they said, "'Tis well." So they all nighted in that intent, and on the morrow they set out for the dwelling of the devotee. this one carrying his son, and that one bearing his brother. Now the man who had stolen the clothes, and had forged against the pious woman a lie, to wit, that he was her lover, sickened of a sore sickness, and his people took him up and set out with him to visit the devotee and crave her prayers, and destiny brought them all together by the way. So they fared forward in a body till they came to the city wherein the man dwelt for whom she had paid the 1,000 dirhams to deliver him from torture, and found him about to travel to her by reason of a malady which had betided him. Accordingly they all journeyed on together, unknowing that the holy woman was she whom they had so foully wronged, and ceased not going till they came to her city, and foregathered at the gates of her palace, that wherein was the tomb of the princess. Now the folk used to go into her and salute her with the salam, and crave her orisons, and it was her custom to pray for none till he had confessed to her or his sins, when she would ask pardon for him, and pray for him that he might be healed, and he was straightway made whole of sickness, by permission of Almighty Allah. When the 4 sick men were brought into her, she knew them forthright, though they knew her not, and said to them, Each of you confess and specify his sins, so I may sue pardon for him and pray for him. And the brother said, As for me, I required my brother's wife of her person, and she refused. Whereupon despite and ignorance prompted me, and I lied against her, and accused her to the townsfolk of adultery. So they stoned her and slew her wrongously and unrighteously. And this my complaint is the issue of unright and falsehood, and the slaying of the innocent soul, whose slaughter Allah hath made unlawful to man. Then said the youth, the old villager's son, And I, O holy woman, my father brought to us a woman who had been stoned, and my people nursed her till she recovered. Now she was rare of beauty and loveliness, so I required of her her person, but she refused and clave in chastity to Allah, to whom belong might and majesty. Wherefore ignorance prompted me, so that I agreed with one of the youths that he should steal clothes and coin from my father's house. Then I laid hands on him and carried him to my sire and made him confess. He declared that the woman was his mistress from the city and had been stoned on his account, and that she was his accomplice in the theft, and had opened the doors to him. But this was a lie against her, for that she had not yielded to me in which I sought of her. So there befell me what ye see of requital. And the young man, the thief, said, I am he with whom thou agreedst concerning the theft, and to whom thou openedst the door. And I am he who accused her falsely and calumniously, and Allah, extolled be he, well knoweth that I never did evil with her, no, nor knew her in any way before that time. Then said he whom she had delivered from torture by paying down 1,000 dirhams, and who had required of her her person in his house, for that her beauty pleased him, and when she refused had forged a letter against her, and treacherously denounced her to the Sultan, and requited her graciousness with ingratitude. I am he who wronged her and lied against her, and this is the issue of the oppressor's affair. When she heard their words in the presence of the folk, she cried, Alhamdulillah! Praise to be Allah, the King who over all things is omnipotent, and blessing upon his prophets and apostles. Then quoth she to the assembly, Bear testimony, O ye here present, to these men's speech, and know ye I am that woman whom they confess to have wronged. And she turned to her husband's brother and said to him, I am thy brother's wife, and Allah, extolled and exalted be he, delivered me from that whereinto thou casted me of calumny and suspicion, and from the folly and frowardness whereof thou hast spoken, and now hath he shown forth my innocence of his bounty and generosity. Go, for thou art quit of the wrong thou didst me. And she prayed for him, and he was made sound of his sickness. Thereupon she said to the son of the village Shak, Know that I am the woman whom thy father delivered from strain and stress, and whom there betided from thee of calumny and ignorance, that which thou hast named. And she sued pardon for him, and he was made sound of his sickness. Then she said to the thief, I am the woman against whom thou liedst, avouching that I was the leman who had been stoned on thine account, and that I was thine accomplice in robbing the house of the village Shakya, and had opened the doors to thee. And she prayed for him, and he was made whole of his malady. Then she said to the townsman, him of the tribute, I am the woman who gave thee the 1,000 dirhams, and thou didst with me what thou didst. And she asked pardon for him and prayed for him, and he was made whole, whereupon the folk marveled at her enemies, who had all been afflicted alike. So Allah, extolled and exalted be He, might show forth her innocence upon the heads of witnesses. Then she turned to the old man, who had delivered her from the pit, and prayed for him, and gave him presents manifold, and among them a myriad, a badra, and the sick made whole departed from her. When she was alone with her husband, she made him draw near unto her, and rejoiced in his arrival, and gave him the choice of abiding with her. Presently she assembled the citizens, and notified to them his virtue and worth, and counseled them to invest him with management of their rule, and besought them to make him king over them. They consented to her on this, and he became king, and made his home amongst them, while she gave herself up to his orisons, and cohabitated with her husband, as she was with him aforetime. Nor, continued the wazir, is this tale, O king of the time, stranger or pleasanter than that of the hireling, and the girl whose maw he slit and fled. When King Shahbak heard this, he said, Most like all they say of the minister is leasing, and his innocence will be made manifest, even as that of the devotee was manifested. Then he comforted the wazir's heart, and bade him hie to his house. End of section 44.
Section 45 of the Book of the 1,000 Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Paul Fleischman. The Book of the 1,000 Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 19th night of the month. When the evening evened, the king bid fetch the wazir, and sought of him the story of the hireling and the girl. So he said, Hearkening and obedience, give ear, O auspicious king, to the tale of the hireling and the girl. There was once, of old time, in one of the tribes of the Arabs, a woman pregnant by her husband, and they had a hired servant, a man of insight and understanding. When the woman came to her delivery time, she gave birth to a girl child in the night, and they sought fire of the neighbors. So the hireling went in quest of fire. Now there was in the camp a divineress, and she questioned him of the newborn child, and it was male or female. Quoth he, 'Tis a girl, and quoth she, That girl will whore with 100 men, and a hireling shall wed her, and a spider shall slay her. When the hired man heard this, he returned upon his steps, and going into the woman, took the child from her by wily management, and slit its maw. Then he fled forth into the wold at haphazard, and abode in strangerhood, while Allah so willed. He gained much money, and, returning to his own land, after 20 years' absence, alighted in the neighborhood of an old woman, whom he wheedled and treated with liberality, requiring of her a young person, whom he might enjoy without marriage. Said she, I know none but a certain fair woman, who is renowned for this industry. Then she described her charms to him, and made him lust after her, and he said, Hasten to her this minute, and lavish upon her whatso she asketh. So the crone betook herself to the girl, and discovered his wishes to her, and invited her to him. But she answered, 'Tis true that I was in the habit of whoredom, but now I have repented to Almighty Allah, and have no more longing to this. Nay, I desire lawful wedlock. So if he be content with what is legal, I am between his hands. The old woman returned to the man, and told him what the damsel said, and he lusted after her, because of her beauty and her penitence. So he took her to wife. And when he went in to her, he loved her, and after like fashion she loved him. Thus they abode a great while, till one day he questioned her of the cause of a scar he espied on her body. And she said, I wot not thereof, save that my mother told me a marvellous thing concerning it. Asked he, what was that? And she answered, my mother declared that she gave birth to me one night of the wintry nights, and dispatched a hired man, who was with us, in quest of fire for her. He was absent a little while, and presently returning, took me, and slit my maw, and fled. When my mother saw this, chagrin seized her, and compassion possessed her. So she sewed up my stomach, and nursed me till the wound healed by the ordinance of Allah, to whom belong might and majesty. When her husband heard this, he said to her, what is thy name, and what may be the name of thy mother, and who may be thy father? She told him their names, and her own, whereby he knew that it was she whose maw he had slit, and said to her, and where are thy father and mother? They are both dead. I am that hireling who slit thy stomach. Why didst thou that? Because of a saying I heard from the wise woman. What was it? She declared thou wouldst play the whore with 100 men, and that I, after that, should wed thee. Aye, I have whored with 100 men, no more and no less, and behold, thou hast married me. The divineress also foresaid that thou shouldst die at the last of thy life of the bite of a spider. Indeed, her saying hath been verified of the fornication and the marriage, and I fear lest her word come true, no less in the death. Then they betook themselves to a place without the city, where he builded him a mansion of solid stone and white stucco, and stopped its inner walls and plastered them, leaving not therein or cranny or crevice. And he set in it 2 slave girls, whose services were sweeping and wiping, for fear of spiders. Here he abode with his wife a great while, till one day the man espied a spider on the ceiling, and beat it down. When his wife saw it, she said, this is that which the wise woman foresaid would slay me. So, by thy life, suffer me to kill it with mine own hand. Her husband forbade her from this, but she conjured him to let her destroy the spider. Then, of her fearfulness and her eagerness, she took a piece of wood and smote it. The wood brake of the force of the blow, and a splinter from it entered her hand and wrought upon it, so that it swelled. Then her forearm also swelled, and the swelling spread to her side, and thence grew till it reached her heart, and she died. Nor, continued the wazir, is this stranger or more wondrous than the story of the weaver who became a leech by commandment of his wife. When the king heard this, his admiration redoubled, and he said, in very truth, destiny is written to all creatures, and I will not accept aught that is said against my minister, the loyal counselor. And he bade him hie to his home. End of section 45. Recording by Paul Fleischman.
Section 46 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shreya Sethi. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 20th night of the month. When the evening evened, and the king bade summon his minister, and he presented himself before him, whereupon he required of him the hearing of the story. So the Vizier said, "Hearkening and obedience. Give ear, O King, to the tale of the weaver who became a leech by order of his wife. There was once, in the land of Furs, a man who wedded a woman higher than himself in rank and nobler of lineage. But she had no guardian to preserve her from bond. She loathed to marry one who was beneath her. Yet she vived with him because of need, and took of him a bond in writing to the effect that he would ever be under her order to bid and forbid, and would never thwart her in word or in deed. Now the man was a weaver, and he bound himself in writing to pay his wife 10,000 dirhams in case of default. After such fashion they abode a long while, till one day the wife went out to fetch water, of which she had need, and saw a leech who had spread a carpet hard by the road, whereon he had set out great store of simples and implements of medicine, and he was speaking and muttering charms, whilst the folk flocked to him from all quarters and girt him about on every side. The weaver's wife marvelled at the largeness of the physician's fortune, and said in herself, "Were my husband thus, he would lead an easy life, and that wherein we are of straitness and poverty would be widened to him." Then she returned home, cark-full and careful, and when her husband saw her in this condition, he questioned her of her case, and she said to him, "Verily, my breast is harrowed by reason of thee and of the very goodness of thine intent." Presently adding, "Narrow means suit me not, and thou in thy present craft gainest not. So either do thou seek out a business other than this, or pay me my rightful due, and let me wend my ways." Her husband chid her for this, and advised her to take patience, but she would not be turned from her design, and said to him, "Go forth and watch yonder physician, how he doth, and learn from him what he saith." Said he, "Let not thy heart be troubled," and added, "I will go every day to the session of the leech." So he began resorting daily to the physician, and committing to memory his answers, and that which he spoke of jargon, till he had gotten a great matter by rote, and all this he learned and thoroughly digested it. Then he returned to his wife and said to her, "I have stored up the physician's sayings in mind, and have mastered his manner of muttering and diagnosis, and prescribing remedies, and I wot by heart the names of the medicines, and of all the diseases, and here abideth of thy bidding, not undone. So what dost thou command me now to do?" Quoth she, "Leave the loom, and open thyself a leech's shop." But quoth he, "My fellow townsmen know me, and this affair will not profit me, save in a land of strangerhood. So come, let us go out from the city, and get us to a foreign land, and live there." And she said, "Do whatso thou willest." Accordingly he arose, and taking his weaving gear, sold it, and bought with the price drugs and simples, and wrought himself a carpet, with which they set out and journeyed to a certain village, where they took up their abode. Then the man fell to going round about the hamlets and villages and outskirts of towns, after donning leech's dress, and he began to earn his livelihood and make much gain. Their affairs prospered, and their circumstances were bettered, wherefore they praised Allah for their present ease, and the village became to them a home. In this way he lived for a long time, but at length he wandered anew, and the days and the nights ceased not to transport him from country to country, till he came to the land of the Room, and lighted down in a city of the cities thereof, wherein was Yalneus the sage. But the weaver knew him not, nor was aware who he was. So he fared forth, as was his wont, in quest of a place where the folk might be gathered together, and hired the courtyard of Yalneus. There he spread his carpet, and setting out on it, his simples and instruments of medicine, praised himself and his skill, and claimed a cleverness such as none but he might claim. Yalneus heard that which he affirmed of his understanding, and it was certified unto him and established in his mind that the man was a skilled leech of the leeches of the Persians, and he said in himself, unless he had confidence in his knowledge, and were minded to confront me and contend with me, he had not sought the door of my house, neither had he spoken that which he hath spoken. And care and doubt gat hold upon Yalneus, so he drew near the weaver and addressed himself to see how his doings should end. Whilst the folk began to flock to him and describe to him their ailments, and he would answer them thereof, hitting the mark one while and missing it another while, so that naught appeared to Yalneus of his fashion, whereby his mind might be assured that he had justly estimated his skill. Presently up came a woman with a urinal, and when the weaver saw the phial afar off, he said to her, "This is the water of a man, a stranger." Said she, "Yes." And he continued, "Is he not a Jew, and is not his ailment flatulence?" "Yes," replied the woman, and the folk marvelled at this. Wherefore the man was magnified in the eyes of Yalneus, for that he heard speech such as was not of the usage of doctors, seeing that they know not urine but by shaking it and looking straightly thereon. Neither wot they a man's water from a woman's water, nor a stranger's from a countryman's, nor a Jew's from a Sharif's. Then the woman asked, "What is the remedy?" And the weaver answered, "Bring the honorarium." So she paid him a dirham, and he gave her medicines contrary to that ailment, and such as would only aggravate the complaint. When Yalneus saw what appeared to him of the man's incapacity, he turned to his disciples and pupils, and bade them fetch the mock doctor, with all his gear and drugs. Accordingly they brought him into his presence without stay or delay, and when Yalneus saw him before him, he asked him, "Knowest thou me?" And the other answered, "No, nor did I ever set eyes on thee before this day." Quoth the sage, "Dost thou know Yalneus?" And quoth the weaver, "No." Then said Yalneus, "What drave thee to do that which thou dost?" So he acquainted him with his adventure, especially with the dowry and the obligation by which he was bound, with regard to his wife, whereat the sage marvelled, and certified himself anent the matter of the marriage settlement. Then he bade lodge him near himself, and entreated him with kindness, and took him apart and said to him, "Expound to me the story of the urine phial, and whence thou knewest that the water therein was that of a man, and he a stranger and a Jew, and that his ailment was flatulence." The weaver replied, "'Tis well. Thou must know that we people of Persia are skilled in physiognomy, and I saw the woman to be rosy-cheeked, blue-eyed, and tall-statured. Now these qualities belong to women who are enamored of a man and are distracted for love of him. Moreover, I saw her burning with anxiety, so I knew that the patient was her husband. As for his strangerhood, I noted that the dress of the woman differed from that of the townsfolk, whereof I knew that she was a foreigner, and in the mouth of the phial I saw a yellow rag, which gard me wot that the sick man was a Jew, and she a Jewess. Moreover, she came to me on the first day, and 'tis the Jews' custom to take meat puddings and food that hath passed the night, and eat them on the Saturday, their Sabbath, hot and cold, and they exceed in eating. Wherefore flatulence and indigestion betide them. Thus I was directed, and guessed that which thou hast heard." Now when Yalneus heard this, he ordered the weaver the amount of his wife's dowry, and bade him pay it to her, and said to him, "Divorce her." Furthermore, he forbade him from returning to the practice of physic, and warned him never again to take to wife a woman of rank higher than his own. and he gave him his spending money and charged him return to his proper craft. Nor, continued the vizier, is this tale stranger or rarer than the story of the two sharpers who each cozened his compeer. When King Shahbakht heard this, he said to himself, "How like is this story to my present case with this minister, who hath not his like?" Then he bade him hie to his own house and come again at eventide. End of section 46. Recording by Shreya Sethi.
Section 47 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lisa Murphy, Richmond, Virginia. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 21st night of the month. When as nighted the night, the wazir presented himself before the king, who bade him relate the promised story. So he said, "Hearkening in obedience, give ear, O king, to the tale of the two sharpers, who each cozened his compeer. There was once in the city of Baghdad a man hight Almarazi, who was a sharper, and ruined the folk with his rogueries, and he was renowned in all quarters for knavery. He went out one day, carrying a load of sheep's droppings, and sware to himself that he would not return to his lodging till he had sold it at the price of raisins. Now there was in another city a second sharper, hight Al-Razi, one of its worst, who went out the same day, bearing a load of goat's droppings, anent which he swore to himself that he would not sell it, but at the price of sun-dried figs. So the twain fared on with that which was by them, and ceased not going till they met in one of the khans, and one complained to other of what he had suffered on travel in quest of gain, and of the little demand for his wares. Now each of them had it in mind to cheat his fellow, so the man of Mar said to the man of Ray, "Wilt thou sell that to me?" He said, "Yes," and the other continued, "And wilt thou buy which is with me?" The man of Ray consented, so they agreed upon this, and each of them sold to his mate that which was with him in exchange for the others, after which they bade farewell, and both fared forth. As soon as the twain were out of sight, they examined their loads to see what was therein, and one of them found that he had a load of sheep's droppings, and the other that he had a load of goat's droppings, whereupon each of them turned back in quest of his fellow. They met again in the khan, and laughing at each other cancelled their bargain. Then they agreed to enter into partnership, and that all they had of money and other goods should be in common, share and share alike. Then quoth Al-Razi to El-Marwazi, "Come with me to my city, for that 'tis nearer than thine." So he went with him, and when he arrived at his quarters, he said to his wife and household and neighbors, "This is my brother, who hath been absent in the land of Khorasan, and is come back." And he abode with him in all honor for a space of 3 days. On the 4th day Al-Razi said to him, "Know, O my brother, that I purpose to do something." The other asked, "What is it?" And the first answered, "I mean to feign myself dead, and do thou go to the bazaar and hire 2 porters and a bier. Then take me up and go about the streets and markets with my body, and collect alms on my account." Accordingly the Mar man repaired to the market, and fetching that which he sought, returned to the Ray man's house, where he found his fellow cast down in the entrance passage, with his beard tied and his eyes shut, and his complexion was paled, and his belly was blown, and his limbs were loose. So he deemed him really dead, and shook him, but he spoke not. Then he took a knife and pricked his feet, but he budged not. Presently said Al-Razi, "What is this, O fool?" And said El-Marwazi, "I deemed thou was dead in very deed." Al-Razi cried, "Get thee to business, and leave funning." So he took him up, and went with him to the market, and collected alms for him that day till eventide, when he bore him back to his abode, and waited till the morrow. Next morning he again took up the bier, and walked around with it as before, in quest of charity. Presently the chief of police, who was of those who had given him alms on the previous day, met him. So he was angered, and fell on the porters and beat them, and took the dead body, saying, I will bury him and win reward in heaven. So his followers took him up, and carrying him to the police officer, fetched grave diggers, who dug him a grave. Then they brought him a shroud and perfumes, and fetched an old man of the quarter to wash him. So the Shakir recited over him the appointed prayers, and laying him on the bench, washed him and shrouded him. After he had been shrouded, he skited, so the grey-beard renewed the washing, and went away to make the wazoo ablution, whilst all the folk departed to do likewise, before the orisons of the funeral. When the dead man found himself alone, he sprang up, as he were a Satan, and donning the corpse-washer's dress, took the cups and water can, and wrapped them up in the napkins. Then he clapped his shroud under his armpit and went out. The doorkeepers thought he was the washer, and asked him, Hast thou made an end of the washing, so we may acquaint the emir? The sharper answered yes, and made off to his abode, where he found the Marman a-wooing his wife, and saying to her, By thy life, thou wilt never again look upon his face, for the best reason that by this time he is buried. I myself escaped not from them, but after toil and trouble, and if he speak, they will do him to death. Quoth she, And what wouldst thou have of me? And quoth he, Satisfy my desire, and heal my disorder, for I am better than thy husband. And he began toying with her as a prelude to possession. Now, when the Ray man heard this, he said, Yonder whittle pimp lusteth after my wife, but I will at once do him a damage. Then he rushed in upon them, and when Almirazi saw him, he wondered and said, How did thou make thine escape? Accordingly, he told him the trick he had played, and they abode talking of that which they had collected from the folk. And indeed they had gotten great store of money. Then said the man of Mar, In very sooth mine absence hath been prolonged, and lief would I return to my own land. El-Razi said, As thou willest. And the other rejoined, Let us divide the monies we have made, and do thou go with me to my home, so I may show thee my tricks and my works. Replied the man of Ray, Come tomorrow, and we will divide the coin. So the Mar man went away, and the other turned to his wife and said to her, We've collected us great plenty of money, and the dog would fain take the half of it, but such things shall never be, for my mind hath been changed against him, since I heard him making love to thee. Now, therefore, I propose to play him a trick, and enjoy all the money, and do thou not oppose me. She replied, 'Tis well. And he said to her, Tomorrow, at peep o' day, I will feign myself dead, and do thou cry aloud and tear thy hair, whereupon the folk will flock to me. Then lay me out and bury me, and when the folk are gone away from the grave, dig down to me, and take me, and fear not for me, as I can abide without harm 2 days in the tomb niche. Whereto she made answer, Do in whatso thou wilt. Accordingly, when it was the dawn hour, she bound his beard, and spreading a veil over him, shrieked aloud, whereupon the people of the quarter flocked to her, men and women. Presently up came Almirazi for the division of the money, and hearing the keening asked, What may be the news? Quoth they, Thy brother is dead. And quoth he in himself, The accursed fellow cozeneth me, so he may get all the coin for himself. But I will presently do with him what shall soon requicken him. Then he tare the bosom of his robe, and bared his head, weeping and saying, Alas, my brother! Ah, alas, my chief! Ah, alas, my lord! Ah! Then he went into the men, who rose and condoled with him. Then he accosted the Ray's man wife, and said to her, How came his death to occur? Said she, I know nothing, except that when I arose in the morning I found him dead. Moreover, he questioned her of the money which was with her, but she cried, I have no knowledge of this, and no tidings. So he sat down at his fellow sharper's head, and said to him, Know, Arazi, that I will not leave thee till after 10 days with their nights, wherein I will wake and sleep by thy grave. So rise, and don't be a fool. But he answered him not, and the man of Mar drew his knife, and fell to sticking it into the other's hands and feet, purposing to make him move. But he stirred not, and he presently grew weary of this, and determined that the sharper was really dead. However, He still his suspicions and said to himself, "This fellow is falsing me, so he may enjoy all the money." Therewith he began to prepare the body for burial, and bought for it perfumes and whatso was needed. Then they brought him to the washing place, and El-Marazi came to him, and heating water till it boiled and bubbled, and a third of it was evaporated, fell to pouring it on his skin, so that it turned bright red and lively blue and was blistered. But he abode still on one case. Presently they wrapped him in the shroud, and set him on the bier, which they took up, and bearing him to the burial place, placed him in the grave niche, and filled in the earth, after which the folk dispersed. But the Mar-man and the widow abode by the tomb, weeping, and ceased not sitting till sundown, when the woman said to him, "Come, let us hie us home, for this weeping will not profit us, nor will it restore the dead." He replied to her, "By Allah, I will not budge hence till I have slept and waked by this tomb 10 days with their nights." When she heard this his speech, she feared lest he should keep his word and his oath, and so her husband perish. But she said in her mind, "This one disassembleth, and I leave him and return to my house. He will tarry by him a little while and go away." And Al-Marazi said to her, "Arise thou, and hie thee home." So she arose and repaired to her house, whilst the man of Mar abode in his place, till the night was half spent. When he said to himself, "How long? Yet how can I let this knavish dog die and lose the money? Better I open the tomb on him and bring him forth, and take my due of him by dint of grievous beating and torment." Accordingly he dug him up and pulled him forth of the grave, after which he betook himself to a garden hard by the burial ground, and cut thence staves and palm fronds. Then he tied the dead man's legs, and laid on to him with the staff, and beat him with grievous beating, but the body never budged. When the time grew longsome on him, his shoulders became aweary, and he feared lest some of the watch passing on his round should surprise and seize him. So he took up Al-Razi, and carrying him forth of the cemetery, stayed not till he came to the Magin's mortuary place, and casting him down in a tower of silence, rained heavy blows upon him till his shoulders failed him, but the other stirred not. Then he seated him by his side and rested, after which he rose and renewed the beating upon him, and thus he did till the end of night, but without making him move. Now, as destiny decreed, a band of robbers, whose wont it was, when they had stolen anything, to resort to that place, and there divide their loot, came thither in early dawn, according to their custom. They numbered 10, and they had with them much wealth, which they were carrying. When they approached the Tower of Silence, they heard a noise of blows within it, and their captain cried, "This is Magin, whom the angels are tormenting." So they entered the cemetery, and as soon as they arrived over against him, the man of Mar feared lest they should be the watchmen come upon him. Therefore he fled and stood among the tombs. The robbers advanced to the place, and finding a man of Rai bound by the feet, and by him some 70 sticks, wondered at this with exceeding wonder, and said, "Allah confound thee! This was a miscreant, a man of many crimes, for earth hath rejected him from her womb. And by my life he is yet fresh. This is his first night in the tomb, and the angels were tormenting him. But now, so whoso of you hath a sin upon his soul, let him beat him by way of offering to Almighty Allah." The robbers said, "We be sinners one and all." So each of them went up to the corpse and dealt it about 100 blows, one saying the while, "This is for my father," and another laid on to him crying, "This is for my grandfather," whilst a third muttered, "This is for my brother," and a fourth exclaimed, "This is for my mother." And they gave not over taking turns at him and beating him till they were weary, whilst Al-Marazi stood laughing and saying in himself, "'Tis not I alone who have entered into default against him. There is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious, the great." Then the robbers applied themselves to sharing their loot, wherein was a sword, which called them to fall out anent the man who should take it. Quoth the captain, "'Tis my rede that we make proof of it, and it be a fine blade. We shall know its worth, and if it be worthless, we shall know that." Whereto they said, "Try it on this corpse, for it is fresh." So the captain took the sword, and drawing it, brandished it, and made a false cut with it. But when the man of Re saw this, he felt sure of death, and said in his mind, I have borne the washing slab, and the boiling water, and the prickling with the knife point, and the grave niche and its straightness, and all this, trusting in Allah that I might be delivered from death. And indeed I have been delivered. But the sword I may not suffer, seeing that one stroke of it will make me a dead man. So saying, he sprang to his feet, and seizing a thigh bone of one departed, shouted at the top of his voice, O ye dead ones, take them to yourselves. And he smote one of them, while his mate of Mars smote another, and they cried out at them, and buffeted them on their neck-napes. Whereupon the robbers left that which was left of the loot, and ran away. And indeed their wits took flight for terror, and they ceased not running till they came forth of the Magian's mortuary ground, and left it at a parasang's length behind them, when they halted, trembling and affrighted for the muchness of that which had befallen them of fear and awe of the dead. As for El-Razi and El-Marwazi, they made peace with each other, and sat down to share the spoil. Quoth the man of Mar, I will not give thee a dirham of this money, till thou pay me my due of the moneys that be in thy house. And quoth the man of Re, I will do naught of the kind, nor will I withdraw this from aught of my due. So they fell out thereupon, and disputed each other, with other and either of the twain went saying to his fellow, I will not give thee a dirham. Wherefore words reigned high between them, and the brawl was prolonged. Meanwhile, when the robbers halted, one of them said to the others, Let us go back and see. And the captain said, This thing is impossible of the dead. Never heard we that they came to life in such a way. Return we and take our monies, for that the dead have no need of money. And they were divided in opinion as to returning, but presently one said, Indeed, our weapons are gone, and we may not prevail against them, and will not draw near the place. Only let one of us go look at it, and, if he hear no sound of them, let him suggest to us what we should do. At this they agreed that they should send a man of them, and assigned him for such mission 2 parts of the plunder. Accordingly, he returned to the burial ground, and gave not over going till he stood at the door of the Tower of Silence, when he heard the words of El-Marwazi to his fellow, I will not give thee a single dirham of the money. The other said the same, and they were occupied with brawling and abuse and talk. So the robber returned in haste to his mates, who said, What is behind thee? Quoth he, Get you gone and run for your lives, O fools, and save yourselves. Much people of the dead are come to life, and between them are words and brawls. Hereat the robbers fled, whilst the 2 sharpers returned to the man of Re's house, and made peace, and added the robbers' spoil to the moneys they had gained, and lived a length of time. Nor, O king of the age, continued the wazir, is this stranger or rarer than the story of the 4 sharpers with the shroff and the ass. When the king heard this story, he smiled, and it pleased him, and he bade the minister to his own house. End of section 47.
Section 48 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shreya Sethi. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous, translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 22nd night of the month. When the evening evened, King Shah Bakht summoned the Wazir and required of him the hearing of the story. So Al-Rawan said, Hearkening and obedience, give ear, O King, to the tale of the sharpers with the shroff and the ass. 4 sharpers once plotted against a shroff, a man of much wealth, and agreed upon a sleight for securing some of his coins. So one of them took an ass, and laying on it a bag wherein were dirhams, lighted down at the shop of the shroff, and sought of him small change. The man of monies brought out to him the silver bits and bartered them with him. whilst the sharper was easy with him in the matter of exchange, so he might gar him long for more gain. As they were thus, up came the other three sharpers and surrounded the donkey, and one of them said, "'Tis he," and said another, "Wait till I look at him." Then he took to considering the ass and stroking him from the crest to the tail, whilst the third went up to him and handled him and felt him from the head to rump, saying, "Yes, 'tis in him." Said another, "No, 'tis not in him." And they left, not doing the like of this for some time. Then they accosted the donkey's owner and chaffered with him, and he said, "I will not sell him but for 10,000 dirhams." They offered him 1,000 dirhams, but he refused and swore that he would not vend the ass but for that which he had said. They ceased not adding to their offer till the price reached 5,000 dirhams, whilst their mate still said, "I'll not vend him save for 10,000 silver pieces." The Shroff advised him to sell, but he would not do this, and said to him, "Ho Sheikh, thou wottest not the case of this donkey. Stick to silver and gold and what pertaineth thereto of exchange and small change, because indeed the virtue of this ass is a mystery to thee. For every craft its crafty men, and for every means of livelihood its peculiar people." When the affair was prolonged upon the three sharpers, they went away and sat down aside. Then they came up privily to the money changer, and said to him, "An thou can buy him for us, do so, and we will give thee 20 dirhams." Quoth he, "Go away and sit down at a distance from him." So they did as he bade, and the Shroff went up to the owner of the ass, and ceased not luring him with the lucre and saying, "Leave these wights and sell me the donkey, and I will reckon him a present from thee," till he sold him the animal for 5,500 dirhams. Accordingly, the money changer weighed out to him that sum of his own monies, and the owner of the ass took the price and delivered the beast to him, saying, "Whatso shall betide, though he abide a deposit upon thy neck, sell him not to yonder cheats for less than 10,000 dirhams, for that they would fain buy him because of a hidden hoard they know, whereto naught can guide them save this donkey. So close thy hand on him, and cross me not, or thou shalt repent." With these words he left him and went away. Whereupon up came the three other sharpers, the comrades of him of the ass, and said to the Shroff, "God requite thee for us with good, in that thou hast bought him. How can we reward thee?" Quoth he, "I will not sell him but for 10,000 dirhams." When they heard that, they returned to the ass and fell again to examining him like buyers and handling him. Then said they to the money changer, "Indeed, we were deceived in him. This is not the ass we sought, and he is not worth to us more than 10 nusufs." Then they left him and offered to go away, whereat the Shroff was sore chagrined and cried out at their speech, saying, "O folk, ye asked me to buy him for you, and now I have bought him. Ye say, we were deceived in him, and he is not worth to us more than 10 nusufs." They replied, "We thought that in him was whatso we wanted. But behold, in him is the contrary of that which we wish. And indeed he hath a blemish, for that he is short of back." Then they made long noses at him, and went away from him and dispersed. The money changer deemed they did but play him off, that they might get the donkey at their own price. But when they walked away from him, and he had long awaited their return, he cried out, saying, "Well away!" and "Ruin!" and "Sorry case I am in!" and shrieked aloud and rent his raiment. So the market people assembled to him and questioned him of his case, whereupon he acquainted them with his condition and told them what the knaves had said, and how they had cozened him, and how they had cajoled him into buying an ass worth 50 dirhams for 5,500. His friends blamed him, and a gathering of the folk laughed at him, and admired his folly and overfaith in believing the talk of the sharpers without suspicion, and meddling with that which he understood not, and thrusting himself into that whereof he had no sure knowledge. On this wise, O King Shahbaksh, continued the Wazir, is the issue of greed for the goods of the world, and indeed coveting that which our knowledge containeth not shall lead to ruin and repentance. Nor, O King of the age, he added, is this story stranger than that of the cheat and the merchants. When the king heard these words, he said in himself, Indeed, had I given ear to the sayings of my courtiers and inclined to their idle prate in the matter of my minister, I had repented to the utterest of penitence. But Alhamdulillah, Laud be to the Lord, who hath disposed me to endurance and long suffering, and hath vouchsafed to me patience. Then he turned to the Wazir and dismissed him to his dwelling, and gave congé to those who were present according to his custom. End of section 48. Recording by Scheherazade. Section 49 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Scheherazade. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous, translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 23rd night of the month. When the evening evened, the king summoned the minister, and when he presented himself before him, he required of him the hearing of the story. So he said, Hearing and obeying, give ear, O illustrious lord, to the tale of the cheat and the merchants. There was once in olden time a certain cheat, who could turn the ear inside out by his talk, and he was a model of cleverness and quick wit and skill and mischief. It was his wont to enter a town and make a show of being a trader, and engage in intimacy with people of worth, and sit in session with the merchants, for his name was noted as a man of virtue and piety. When he would put a slight on them, and take of them what he might spend and fare forth to another stead, and he ceased not to do thus for a while of time. It chanced one day that he entered a certain city and sold somewhat that was with him of merchandise, and made friends of the merchants of the place, and took to sitting with them and entertaining them and inviting them to his quarters and his assembly, whilst they also invited him to their houses. He abode after such fashion a long time until he was minded to quit the city, and this was bruited among his intimates, who grieved for parting from him. Then he betook himself to one of them who was the richest in substance and the most conspicuous for generosity, and sat with him and borrowed his goods. And when rising to depart, he bade him return the deposit that he had left with him. Quoth the merchant, And what is the deposit? And quoth the cheat, 'Tis such a purse with the 1,000 dinars therein. The merchant asked, And when didst thou give me that same? And the cheat answered, Extolled be Allah of all might, was it not on such a day by such a token which is thus and thus? The man rejoined, I know not of this. And words were bandied about between them, whilst the folk who heard them disputed together concerning their sayings and doings, till their voices rose high, and the neighbours had knowledge of that which passed between them. Then said the cheat, O people, this is my friend, and I deposited with him a deposit which he denieth having received. So, in whom shall men put trust after this? And they said, This person is a man of worth, and we have known in him naught but trustiness and good faith, and the best of breeding, and he is endowed with sense and manliness. Indeed, he affirmeth no false claim. For that we have consorted and associated with him, and he with us, and we know the sincerity of his religion. Then quoth one of them to the merchant, Ho, such an one! Bethink thee of the past and refresh thy memory. It cannot be that thou hast forgotten. But quoth he, O people, I wot nothing of what he saith, for indeed he deposited not with me. And the matter was prolonged between them. Then said the cheat to the merchant, I am about to travel, and I have, praised be Allah Almighty, much wealth, and this money shall not escape me, but do thou make oath to me. And the folk said, Indeed, this man doth justice upon himself. Whereupon the merchant fell into that which he disliked, and came nigh upon loss and ill fame. Now he had a friend who pretended to sharpness and intelligence. So he came up to him secretly and said to him, Let me do so, I may cheat this cheat. For I know him to be a liar, and thou art near upon having to weigh out the gold. But I will parry off suspicion from thee, and say to him, The deposit is with me, and thou erredst in suspecting that it was with other than myself, and so I will divert him from thee. The other replied, Do so, and rid the people of such pretended debts. Accordingly, the friend turned to the cheat and said to him, O my lord, I am such an one, and thou goest under a delusion. The purse is with me, for it was with me that thou depositedst it, and this sheikh is innocent of it. But the cheat answered him with impatience and impetuosity, saying, Extolled be Allah! As for the purse that is with thee, O noble and faithful man, I know 'tis under Allah's charge, and my heart is easy anent it, because 'tis with thee as it were with me. But I began by demanding the purse which I deposited with this man of my knowledge, that he coveteth the goods of folk. At this the friend was confounded and put to silence, and returned not a reply. And the only result of his meddling was that each of them, merchant and friend, had to pay 1,000 gold pieces. So the cheat took the 2,000 dinars and made off. And when he was gone, the merchant said to his friend, the man of pretended sharpness and intelligence, Ho, such an one, thou and I are like the falcon and the locust. The friend asked, What was their case? And the merchant answered with, The story of the falcon and the locust. There was once, of old time, a falcon who made himself a nest hard by the home of a locust, and his neighbor gloried in such neighborhood, and betaking herself to him, saluted him with the salam, and said, O my lord and lord of all the birds! Indeed, the nearness to thee delighteth me, and thou honourest me with thy vicinity, and my soul is fortified with thee. The falcon thanked her for this, and friendship between them followed. One day the locust said to the bird, O prince of the flying race, how is it that I see thee alone, solitary, having with thee no friend of thy kind, the volatiles, on whom thou mayest repose in time of gladness, and of whom thou mayest seek aid in tide of sadness? Indeed, 'tis said, man goeth about seeking ease of body and word of strength, and there is naught in this more necessary to him than a true friend, who shall be the crown of his comfort and the column of his career, and on whom shall be his dependence in his distress and in his delight. Now I, although ardently desiring thy weal in that which befitteth thy rank and degree, yet am weak in that which the soul craveth. But, an thou deign give me leave, I will seek out for thee one of the birds who shall fellow thee in body and strength. And the falcon said, I commit this to thee, and rely upon thee herein. Thereupon, O my brother, quoth the merchant, the locust began going round the company of the birds, but saw naught resembling the falcon in bulk and body, save the kite, and thought well of her. So she brought the twain together and counselled the falcon to foregather with the kite. Presently it fortuned that the falcon fell sick, and the kite tarried with and tended him a long while till he recovered and became sound and strong. Wherefore he thanked her, and she fared from him. But after some days the falcon's sickness returned to him, and he needed succour of the kite. So the locust went out from him and was absent from him a day, after which she returned to him with another locust, saying, I have brought thee this one. When the falcon saw her, he said, God requite thee with good. Indeed, thou hast done well in the quest, and thou hast shown subtlety and discrimination in the choice. All this befell because the locust had no knowledge of the essence which lurketh in the outer semblance of bodies. As for thee, O my brother, Allah requite thee with weal. Thou wast subtle in device, and used precaution, but forethought availeth not against fate, and fortune foreordained baffleth force of fence. How excellent is the saying of the poet when he spake these couplets. It chances whiles that the blind man escapes a pit, whilst he who is clear of sight falls into it. The ignorant man may speak with impunity, a word that is death to the wise and the ripe of wit. The true believer is pinched for his daily bread, whilst infidel rogues enjoy all benefit. Where is a man's resource, and what can he do? It is the Almighty's will we must submit. Nor, continued the Wazir, is this, O King of the age, rarer or stranger than the story of the king and his chamberlain's wife. Nay, this is more wondrous than that and more delectable. When the king heard this story, he was strengthened in his resolve to spare the minister and to eschew haste in an affair whereof he was not certified. So he comforted him and bade him hie to his home. End of section 49. Recording by Scheherazade. Section 50 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Scheherazade. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous, translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 24th night of the month. When it was the night, the king summoned the Wazir and sought of him the hearing of the story. Al-Rawan replied, Hearkening and obedience, listen, O august sovereign, to the tale of the king and his chamberlain's wife. There was once, in days of yore, and in ages and times long gone before, a king of the kings of the Persians, who was much addicted to the love of fair women. His courtiers spoke him of the wife of a certain of his chamberlains, a model of beauty and loveliness and perfect grace, and this egged him on to go in to her. When she saw him, she knew him, and said to him, What urgeth the king to this that he doeth? And the king replied, saying, Verily, I long for thee with excess of longing, and there is no help but that I enjoy thy favours. And he gave her of wealth that after whose like women lust. And she said, I cannot do the deed whereof the king speaketh, for fear of my husband. And she refused herself to him with the most rigorous of refusals, and would not suffer him to win his wish. So the king went out in wrath, and forgot his girdle in the place. Now it chanced that her husband entered immediately after his lord had departed, and saw the girdle, and knew it. He was aware of the king's love for women, so quoth he to his wife, What be this I see with thee? Quoth she, I'll tell thee the truth, and recounted to him the occurrence. But he believed her not, and suspicion entered his heart. As for the king, He passed that night in care and concern, and when the morning morrowed, he summoned that chamberlain and made him governor of one of his provinces. Then he bade him betake himself thither, purposing, after he should have departed and fared afar, to foregather with his wife. The chamberlain perceived his project and kenned his intent. So he answered, saying, "To hear is to obey," presently adding, "I will go and order my affairs, and give such injunctions as may be needed for the well-doing of my affairs. Then will I go about the sovereign's command." And the king said, "Do this and make haste." So the chamberlain went about that which he needed, and assembling his wife's kinfolk, said to them, "I am determined to dismiss my wife." They took this ill of him and complained of him, and summoning him before the sovereign, sat prosecuting him. Now the king had no knowledge of that which had passed, so he said to the chamberlain, "Why wilt thou put her away? And how can thy soul consent to this? And why takest thou unto thyself a fine and fertile piece of land, and presently forsakest it?" Answered the husband, "Allah amend the king! By the Almighty, O my king, I saw therein the trail of the lion, and fear to enter that land, lest the lion devour me. And the like of my affair with her is that which befell between the crone and the draper's wife." The king asked, "What is their adventure?" And the chamberlain answered, "Hear, O king, the story of the crone and the draper's wife. There was once a man of the drapers who had a beautiful wife, and she was curtained and chaste. A certain young man saw her coming forth of the hammam, and loved her, and his heart was engrossed with her. So he devised for access to her all manner of devices, but availed not to foregather with her. And when he was aweary, and his patience failed for travail, and trouble and his fortitude betrayed and forsook him, and he was at an end of his resources against her, he complained of this to an ill-omened crone, who promised him to bring about union between him and his beloved. He thanked her for this, and promised her all manner of douceurs. And she said to him, "Hie thee to her husband, and buy of him a turband cloth of fine linen, and let it be of the very best of stuff." So he repaired to the draper, and buying of him a turband cloth of lawn, returned and gave it to the old woman, who took it and burned it in 2 places. Then she donned the dress of a devotee, and taking the turband cloth with her, went to the draper's house and knocked at the door. When the draper's wife saw her thus habited as a holy woman, she opened to her and admitted her with kindly reception, and made much of her and welcomed her. So the crone went in to her and conversed with her a while. Then said she to her, "I want to make the Vadu ablution preparatory to prayer." At these words the wife brought the water, and she made the ablution, standing up to pray, prayed and satisfied herself, and when she had ended her orisons, she left the turband cloth in the place of the prayer, and fared forth. Presently in came the draper, at the hour of night devotions, and sitting down in the prayer place where the old woman had prayed, looked about him and espied the turband. He knew it and suspected foul play. So wrath showed in his face, and he was furious with his wife, and reviled her, and abode his day and his night without speaking to her, during all which, while she knew not the cause of his rage, then she looked, and seeing the turband cloth before him, and noting the traces of burning thereon, understood that his anger was on account of this, and concluded that he was in ill temper because it was burnt. When the morning morrowed, the draper went out, still wroth with his wife, and the crone returned to her and found her changed of colour, pale of complexion, dejected and heartbroken. So she questioned her of the cause, and the wife told her how her husband was angered against her on account of the burns in the turband cloth. Rejoined the old woman, "O my daughter, be not chagrined, for I have a son, a fine drawer, and he, by thy life, shall find draw the holes and restore the turbaned cloth as it was. The wife rejoiced in her saying and asked her, And when shall this be? The crone answered, Tomorrow, Insha'Allah, and it please Allah the Most High, I will bring him to thee at the time of thy husband's going forth from thee, and he shall find it and depart forthwith. Then she comforted her heart, and going away from her, returned to the young man and acquainted him with what had passed. Now when the draper saw the turbaned cloth, he determined to divorce his wife, and waited only till he could collect that which was obligatory on him of the contingent dowry, and what not else, for fear of her people. When the crone arose in the morning, she took the young man and carried him into the draper's house. The wife opened the door to her, and the ill-omened old woman entered with him and said to the lady, Go fetch that which thou wouldest have fine drawn and give it to my son. So saying, she bolted the door on her, whereupon the young man raped her against her will, and did his want of her and went forth. Then cried the crone, Know that this is my son, and that he loved thee with exceeding love, and was like to lose his life for longing after thee. So I devised for thee with this device, and came to thee with this turbaned cloth, which is not thy husband's but my son's. Now have I won to my wish, so do thou trust in me, and I will put a slight on thy husband for setting thee right with him, and thou wilt be subject to me, and to him, and to my son. And the wife replied, 'Tis well, do so. Presently the old woman returned to the lover and said, Know thou that I have engineered the affair for thee with her, and now we must mend that we have marred. Hie thee and sit with the draper, and mention to him the turbaned cloth, saying, The turband I bought of thee I chanced to burn in 2 places. So I gave it to a certain old woman to have fine drawn, and she took it and went away, and I know not her dwelling place. When thou seest me pass by, rise and lay hold of me, and demand of me the cloth, to the intent that I may arrange her affair with her spouse, and that matters go right with thee in her regard. Accordingly he repaired to the draper's shop, and sat down by him, and asked him, Thou knowest the turbaned cloth I bought of thee? Yes. Knowest thou what is come of it? No. After I bought it of thee, I fumigated myself, and it fortuned that the turbaned cloth was burnt in 2 places. So I gave it to a woman, whose son they said was a fine drawer, and she took it and fared forth with it, and I know not her home. When the draper heard this, he was startled by the thought that he had suspected his wife wrongfully, and marvelled at the story of the turbaned cloth, and his mind was made easy anent her. After a short while, up came the old woman, whereupon the young man sprang to his feet, and seizing her, demanded of her the turbaned cloth. Said she, Know that I entered one of the houses, and wadooed and prayed in the prayer place, and I forgot the turbaned cloth there, and went out. Now I weet not the house in which I prayed, nor have I been divinely directed thereto, and I go round about every day till the night, so haply I may light on the dwelling, for I know not its owner. When the draper heard these words, he said to the old woman, Verily, Allah restoreth to thee that which thou hast lost. Be gladdened by good news, for the turbaned cloth is with me and in my house. And he arose forthright and handed to her the turbaned cloth as it was, and she handed it to the young man. Then the draper made peace with his wife, and gave her raiment and jewelry, till she was content and her heart was appeased. When the king heard this chamberlain's story, he was dazed and amazed, and said to him, Abide on thy service and hear thy field, for that the lion entered it, but marred it not, and he will never more return thither. Then he bestowed on him an honourable robe, and made him a costly present, and the man returned to his wife and people, rejoicing, his heart having been set at rest concerning his wife. Nor, continued the vizier, O king of the age, is this rarer or stranger than the story of the beautiful wife, a woman gifted of amorous grace, with the ugly man, her husband. When King Shah Bakht heard the minister's speech, he deemed it delectable, and it pleased him, so he bade him hie to his house, and there he tarried his day long. End of section 50. Recording by Shreya Sethi.
Section 51 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lisa Stump. Visit my website at lisastumpbooks.com. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11 by Anonymous, translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 25th night of the month. When the evening eaved, the king summoned his wazir and bade him tell the tale. So he said, "'Tis well. Hear, O king, the tale of the ugly man and his beautiful wife. There was once a man of the Arabs who had a number of children, and amongst them a boy. Never was seen a fairer than he of favor, nor a more complete in comeliness. No, nor a more perfect of prudence. When he came to man's estate, his father married him to his first cousin, the daughter of one of his paternal uncles, and she excelled not in beauty, neither was she laudable for qualities, wherefore she pleased not the youth, but he bore with her for the sake of kinship. One day he fared forth in quest of certain camels of his, which had strayed and hied him on all his day and night till eventide, when he was fain to seek hospitality in an Arab camp. So he alighted at one of the tents of the tribesmen, and there came forth to him a man short of stature and foul of favor, who saluted him with the salam, and, lodging him in a corner of the tent, sat entertaining him with chat, the cheeriest that might be. When his food was dressed, the Arab's wife brought it to the guest, and he looked at the mistress of the tent and saw a semblance than which no seemlier might be. Indeed, her beauty and loveliness, her symmetry and perfect grace amazed him, and he was struck with astonishment, gazing now at her and then at her mate. When his looking grew long, the man said to him, "Ho, thou son of the worthy, busy thyself with thine own business, for by me and this woman hangeth a wondrous tale, which is even better than that thou seest of her beauty, and I will tell it to thee when we have made a finish of our food." So, when they had ended eating and drinking, the young man asked the host for the story, and he said, "Know that in my youth I was the same as thou seest me in the matter of loathliness and foul favor, and I had brethren of the fairest of the folk. Wherefore my father preferred them over me, and used to show them kindness, to my exclusion, and made me serve in their stead, like as a master employeth slaves. One day a dromedary of his strayed from the herd of camels, and he said to me, 'Go forth in quest of her, and return not but with her.' I replied, 'Send other than I of thy sons.' But he would not consent to this, and scolded me, and insisted upon me, till the matter came to such a pass with him that he took a thong whip and fell to beating me. So I arose, and saddling a riding camel, mounted her and sallied forth at random, purposing to go out into the wolds and the wilds, and return to him nevermore. I fared on all my night and the next day, and coming at eventide to the encampment of this my wife's people, alighted down with and became the guest of her father, who was a sheik well stricken in years. Now, when it was the noon of night, I arose and went forth the tent at a call of nature, and none knew of my case save this woman. The dogs followed me as a suspected stranger, and ceased not worrying me, till I fell on my back into a pit, wherein was water, a deep hollow and a steep, and a dog of those dogs fell in with me. The woman, who was then a girl in the bloom of youth, full of strength and spirit, was moved to ruth on me, for the calamity whereinto I was fallen, and coming to me with a rope, said to me, "Catch hold of the rope." So I hent it and clung to it, and she haled me up. But when I was halfway up, I pulled her down, and she fell with me into the pit. And there we abode 3 days, she and I and the hound. When her people arose in the morning and did not see her, they sought her in the camp, but finding her not and missing me also, never doubted but she had fled with me. Now she had 4 brothers, as they were saker hawks, and they took horse and dispersed in search of us. When the day yellowed on the 4th dawn, the dog began to bark, and the other hounds answered him, and coming to the mouth of the pit, stood howling to him. My wife's father, hearing the howling of the hounds, came up, and standing at the brink of the hollow, looked in and beheld a marvel. Now he was a brave man and a sensible, an elder experienced in affairs, so he fetched a cord, and bringing forth the three, questioned us twain of our case. I told him all that had betided, and he fell a pondering the affair. Presently her brothers returned, whereupon the old man acquainted them with the whole case, and said to them, O my sons, know that your sister intended not aught but good, and if ye kill this man, ye will earn abiding shame, and ye will wrong him, and wrong your own souls, and eke your sister. For indeed there appeareth no cause such as calleth for killing, and it may not be denied that this accident is a thing whose like may well occur, and that he may easily have been the victim of such like chance. Then he addressed me and questioned me of my lineage, so I set forth to him my genealogy, and he, exclaiming, A man of her match, honorable, understanding, offered me his daughter in wedlock. I consented to this, and marrying her, took up my abode with him, and Allah hath opened on me the gates of weal and wealth, so that I am become the richest in moneys of the tribesmen, and the Almighty hath stablished me in that which he hath given me of his bounties. The young man marveled at his tale, and lay the night with him. And when he arose in the morning, he found his estrays. So he took them, and returning to his folk, acquainted them with what he had seen, and all that had befallen him. Nor, continued the wazir, is this stranger or rarer than the story of the king who lost kingdom and wealth and wife and children, and Allah restored them to him, and requited him with a realm more magnificent than that which he had forfeited, and better and finer and greater of wealth and degree. The minister's story pleased the king, and he bade him depart to his abode. End of section 51. Recording by Lisa Stump. Visit my website at lisastumppbooks.com.
Section 52 of the Book of 1000 Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Deanna Terrio. The Book of 1000 Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 26th night of the month. When came the night, the king summoned his vizier and bade him tell the story of the king who lost kingdom and wife and wealth. He replied, Hearing and obeying. Give ear, O sovereign, to the tale of the king who lost kingdom and wife and wealth, and Allah restored them to him. There was once a king of the kings of Hind, who was a model of morals, praiseworthy in policy, lief of justice to his lieges, lavish to men of learning and piety and abstinence and devoutness and worship, and shunning mischief-makers and forward folk, fools and traitors. After such goodly fashion he abode in his kingship what Allah the Most High willed of watches and days and 12 months. And he married the daughter of his father's brother, a beautiful woman and a winsome, endowed with brightness and perfection, who had been reared in the king's house in delicacy and delight. She bare him 2 sons, the most beauteous that might be of boys, when came destiny, from whose decree is no deliverance, and Allah the Most High raised up against the king another king, who came forth upon his realm, and was joined by all the folk of the city that had a mind to lewdness and forwardness. So he strengthened himself by means of them against the king, and compassed his kingdom, routing his troops and killing his guards. The king took his wife, the mother of his sons, and what he might of moneys, and saved his life, and fled in the darkness of the night, unknowing whither he should wend. When as wayfare grew sore upon them, there met them highwaymen on the way, who took all that was with them, so that naught remained to each of them save a shirt and trousers. The robbers left them without even provaunt or camels or other riding cattle, and they ceased not to fare on afoot till they came to a copse, which was an orchard of trees on the ocean shore. Now the road which they would have followed was crossed by a sea arm, but it was shallow and scant of water. Wherefore, when they reached that place, the king took up one of his children, and fording the water with him, set him down on the further bank, and returned for his other son, whom also he seated by his brother. Lastly, returning for their mother, he took her up, and passing the water with her, came to the place where he had left his children, but found them not. Thereupon he looked at the midst of the island, and saw an old man and an old woman engaged in making themselves a reed hut. So he set down his wife over against them, and started off in quest of his children. But none gave him news of them, and he went round about right and left, yet found not the whereabouts they were. On this wise fared it with him. But as to the children, they had entered the copse to make water, and they found there a forest of trees, wherein, if a sturdy horseman strayed, he might wander by the week and never know its first from its last. So the boys pushed into it, and wotted not how they should return, and went astray in that wood, for a purpose willed of Allah Almighty, whilst their father sought them, but found them not. So he returned to their mother, and they abode weeping for their children. As for whom, when they entered the forest, it swallowed them up, and they fared at haphazard, wandering in it many days, knowing not whence they came or whither they went, till they issued forth at another side upon the open country. Meanwhile their parents, the king and queen, tarried in the island, over against the old man and his old woman, and ate of the fruits, and drank of the rills that were in it, till, one day of the days, as they sat, behold, up came a ship, and made fast to the island side for provisioning with water. Whereupon they looked one at other and spoke. The master of the craft was a Magian man, and all that was therein, both crew and goods, belonged to him, for he was a trader, and went round about the world. Now greed of gain deluded the old man, the owner of the island, and he fared to the ship and gave the Guebra news of the king's wife, setting out to him her charms, till he made him long for her, and his soul moved him to practice treachery and cousinage upon her, and take her from her husband. Accordingly he sent to her, saying, Aboard with us is a woman with child, and we dread lest she be delivered this night. Hast thou aught of skill in midwifery? She replied, Yes. Now it was the last of the day, so he sent her to come up into the ship and deliver the woman, for that the labour pangs were come upon her. And he promised her clothes and spending money. Hereat she embarked confidently, with heart at ease for herself, and transported her gear to the ship. But no sooner had she come thither than the sails were hoisted, and the canvas was loosed, and the ship set sail. When the king saw this, he cried out, and his wife wept in the ship, and would have cast herself into the waves, but the Magian bade his men lay hands on her. So they seized her, and it was but a little while ere the night darkened, and the ship vanished from the king's eyes. Whereupon he fainted away for excess of weeping and lamentation, and passed his night bewailing his wife and his children. And when the morning morrowed, he began improvising these couplets. O world, how long this spite, this enmity? Say me, dost ever spare what spared can be? And look, my friends have fared fain and free. They went and went with them my dear delight, e'en from the day when friends to part were dight, and turbid made their lost life's clarity. By Allah, ne'er I wist their worth aright, nor e'er wot I worth of friends unite, till fared they, leaving flame and heart of me. I'll ne'er forget them, since what day each wight hied and withdrew from me his well-loved sight, and yet I weep this parting blow to dree. I vow in heaven deign my friend's return, and cry the crier in mine ears that yearn, the far is near, right soon their sight shalt see. Upon their sight my cheeks I'll place, to sprite I'll say, rejoice, thy friends return to thee. Nor blame my heart when friends were lief to flee. I rent my heart, ere rent my raiment-tree. He sat weeping for the severance of his wife and children till the morning, when he went forth wandering at a venture, unweeting what he should do, and ceased not walking along the seashore days and nights, unknowing whither he went, and taking no food save the herbs of the earth, and seeing neither man, nor wildling, nor other living thing, till his wayfare brought him to a mountain top. He sojourned in the highland, and abode a while there alone, eating of its fruits and drinking of its founts. Then he came down thence, and trudged along the high road 3 days, when he hit upon tilled fields and villages, and gave not over going till he made a great city on the shore of the salt sea, and came to its gate at the last of the day. The gatekeepers allowed him no admission, so he spent his night and hungered, and when he arose in the morning, he sat down hard by the portal. Now the king of the city was dead, and had left no son, and the citizens fell out anent who should be ruler over them, and their words and reeds differed, so that civil war was like to befall them thereupon. But it came to pass that, after long jangle, they agreed to leave the choice to the late king's elephant, and that he unto whom he consented should be king, and that they would not contest with him this way. So to this they sware, and on the morrow they brought out their elephant, and fared to a site within sight of the city. Nor was there man or woman but was present at that moment. Then they adorned the elephant, and raising the throne on his back, gave him the crown in his trunk, and he went round about examining the countenances of the folk, but stopped not over against any of them, till he came at last to the forlorn king, the exile, who had lost his children and his wife, when the beast prostrated himself to him, and placing the crown on his head, took him up and set him upon his back. Thereupon the people all prostrated themselves, and gave mutual joy of this, and the drums of good tidings beat before him, and he entered the city, and went on till he reached the house of justice, and the audience hall of the palace, and sat down upon the throne of the kingdom, crown on head. Whereat the lieges entered to congratulate him and to bless him. Then he addressed himself, as was his wont in the kingship, to forwarding the affairs of the folk, and ranging the troops according to their ranks, and looking into their affairs and those of all the riots. He also released those who were in the dungeons, and abolished the custom dues, and gave honorable robes, and lavished great gifts, and bestowed largesse, and conferred favors on the emirs, and wazirs, and lords of the realm. And the chamberlains and nabobs presented themselves before him, and did him homage. So the city people rejoiced in him, and said, Indeed, this be none other than a king of the greatest of the kings. And presently he assembled the sages, and the theologians, and the sons of the sovereigns, and conversed with them, and asked them subtle questions, and casuistical problems, and talked over with them things manifold of all fashions that might direct him to rectitude in the kingship. And he questioned them also of mysteries, and religious obligations, and of the laws of the land, and the regulations of rule, and of that which it beseemeth the liege lord to do, of looking into the affairs of the lieges, and repelling the foe, and fending off his malice with force and fight. So the subjects' contentment redoubled, and their exaltation in that which Allah Almighty had vouchsafed them of his kingship over them. On such wise he upheld the ordinance of the realm, and the affairs abode stablished upon the accepted custom and local usage. Now the late king had left a wife and 2 daughters, And the people would fain have married the Princess Royal to the new king, that the rule might not pass clean away from the old rulers. Accordingly they proposed to him that he should wed her or the other of the deceased king's daughters, and he promised them this, but he put them off from him of his respect for the covenant he had made with his former wife, his cousin, that he would marry none other than herself. Then he betook himself to fasting by day and praying through the night, multiplying his almsdeeds, and beseeching Allah, extolled and exalted be He, to reunite him with his children and his wife, the daughter of his father's brother. When a year had elapsed, there came to the city a ship, wherein were many merchants and much merchandise. Now it was their custom from time immemorial that the king, whenever a ship made port, sent to it such of his pages as he trusted in, who took agency of the goods, to the end that they might be first shown to the sovereign, who bought as much of them as befitted him, and gave the merchants leave to sell whatso he wanted not. So he commissioned, according to his custom, a man who should fare to the ship, and seal up the bales and set over them one who could watch and ward them. Meanwhile the queen, his wife, when the Magian fled with her, and proffered himself to her, and lavished upon her abounding wealth, rejected him, and was like to kill herself for chagrin at that which had befallen, and for concern anent her separation from her husband. She also refused meat and drink, and resolved to cast herself into the sea. But the Magian chained her, and straightened her, and clothed her in a coat of wool, and said to her, I will continue thee in wretchedness and humiliation until thou obey me, and accept me. So she took patience, and looked for the Almighty to deliver her from the hand of that accursed. And she ceased not travelling with him from country to country, till he came with her in fine to the city wherein her husband was king, and his goods were put under seal. Now the woman was in a chest, and 2 youths of the late king's pages, who were now in the new king's service, were those who had been charged with the watch and ward of the craft and her cargaison. When the evening evened on them, the twain began talking, and recounted that which had befallen them in their days of childhood, and the manner of the faring forth of their father and mother from their country and kingdom, when the wicked overcame their realm, and how they had gone astray in the forest, and how fate had severed them from their parents. For short, they told their tale from first to last. When the woman heard their talk, she knew that they were her sons, and cried out to them from the chest, I am your mother, such an one, and the token between you twain and me is thus and thus. The young men knew the token, and falling upon the chest brake the lock and brought out their mother, who seeing them strained them to her bosom, and they fell upon her and fainted away, all 3. When they came to themselves, they wept a while, and the people assembled about them, marvelling at that they saw, and questioned them of their case. So the young princes vied each with other who should be the first to discover the story to the folk. And when the Magian saw this, he came up, crying out, Alack and ruin! And said to them, Why, and wherefore have ye broken open my chest? Verily, I had in it jewels, and ye have stolen them. And this damsel is my slave girl, and she hath agreed with you both upon a device to take my wealth. Then he rent his raiment, and cried for aid, saying, I appeal to Allah and to the just king, so he may quit me of these wrongous ewes. They both replied, This is our mother, and thou stolest her. Whereupon words waxed manifold between them, and the folk plunged into talk with many a he said, and 'twas said concerning their affair and that of the pretended slave girl. And the strife increased between them, so that at last they carried them all 4 to the king's court. When the 2 young men presented themselves between his hands, and stated their case to him and to the folk, and the sovereign heard their speech, he knew them, and his heart was like to fly for joy. The tears poured from his eyes at their sight and the sight of his wife, and he thanked Allah Almighty and praised him for that he had deigned reunite them. Then he bade the folk who were present about him be dismissed, and commanded the Magian and the woman and the 2 youths be tomorrow committed to his armory for the night, ordering that they should keep guard over them all until the Lord should make the morning tomorrow, so that he might assemble the Qazis and the justiciaries and assessors, and determine between them, according to holy law, in the presence of the 4 judges. So they did this, and the king passed the night praying and praising Allah of all might for that which he had vouchsafed him of kingship and power and victory over the wight who had wronged him. When the morning morrowed, he assembled the Qazis and deputies and assessors, and summoning the Magian and the 2 youths and their mother, questioned them of their case. Whereupon the 2 young men began, and said, "We are the sons of King Such-an-One, and foemen and lewd fellows gat the mastery of our realm. So our sire fled forth with us, and wandered at haphazard for fear of the foe." And they recounted to him all that had betided them from beginning to end. Quoth he, "Ye tell a marvellous tale, but what hath fate done with your father?" Quoth they, "We know not how fortune dealt with him after our loss." And he was silent. Then he bespake the woman, "And thou, what sayest thou?" So she set forth to him her case, and all that had betided her and her husband, from the beginning of their hardships to the end, and recounted to him their adventures up to the time when they took up their abode with the old man and woman who dwelt on the sea-shore. Then she reported that which the Magian had practised on her of fraud, and how he had carried her off in the craft, and everything that had betided her of humiliation and torment. All this while the Qazis and judges and deputies, hearkening to her speech, as they had lent ear to the others' adventures. When the king heard the last of his wife's tale, he said, "Verily, there hath betided thee a mighty grievous matter. But hast thou knowledge of what thy husband did, and what came of his affair?" She replied, "Nay, by Allah, I have no knowledge of him, save that I leave him no hour unremembered in righteous prayer, and that never, whilst I live, will he cease to be to me the father of my children, and my cousin, and my flesh and my blood." Then she wept, and the king bowed his head, whilst his eyes welled tears at her tale. Presently he raised his head to the Magian, and cried to him, "Say thy say, thou also." So the Magian replied, "This is my slave girl, whom I bought with my money from such a country for so many dinars, and I made her my betrothed, and loved her exceedingly, and gave my monies into her charge. But she falsed me in my substance, and plotted with one of my lads to slay me, tempting him by a promise that she would kill me and become his wife. When I knew this of her, and was assured that she purposed treason against me, I awoke from my dream of happiness, and did with her that which I did, fearing for my life from her craft and perfidy. For indeed she is a trickstress with her tongue, and she hath taught these 2 youths this pretense by way of sleight, and of her guile and her malice. So be you not deluded by her and by her talk." "Thou liest, O accursed," cried the king, and bade lay hands on him and iron him. Then he turned to the 2 youths, his sons, and strained them to his breast, weeping sore, and saying, "O all ye people who are present of Qazis and assessors and lords of the land, know that these twain are my sons, and that this is my wife, and the daughter of my father's brother, for that whilome I was king in such a realm." And he recounted to them his history from commencement to conclusion, nor is there aught of fruition in repetition. Whereupon the folk cried out with weeping and wailing for the stress of what they heard of marvellous chances and that wondrous story. As for the king's wife, he bade carry her into his palace, and lavished upon her and upon her sons all that befitted and beseemed them of bounties, whilst the lieges flocked to offer up prayers for him and give him joy of his reunion with his wife and children. When they had made an end of blessings and congratulations, they besought the king to hasten the punishment of the Magian and heal their hearts with tormenting and abasing him. So he appointed them for a day on which they should assemble to witness his requitement, and that which should betide him of torment, and shut himself up with his wife and 2 sons, and abode thus private with them 3 days, during which time they were veiled from the folk. On the 4th day the king entered the hammam, and faring forth sat down on the throne of his kingship, crown on head, whereupon the folk came in to him, according to their custom, and after the measure of their several dignities and degrees. And the emirs and wazirs entered, and eke the chamberlains and nabobs, and captains of war, and the falconers and arm-bearers, and commanders of the bodyguard. Then he seated his 2 sons, one on his right and the other on his left hand, whilst the subjects all stood before him and lifted up their voices in thanksgiving to Allah the Most High and glorification of him, and were instant in orisons for the king, and in setting forth his virtues and excellent qualities. He answered them with the most gracious of answers, and bade carry the Magian outside the city, and set him on a high scaffold which had been builded for him there. And he said to the folk, Behold, I will torture him with torments of all kinds and fashions. Then he began telling them that which he had wrought of villainy with his cousin wife, and what he had caused her of severance between her and her husband, and how he had required her person of her. But she had sought refuge for her chastity against him with Allah, to whom belong honor and glory, and chose abasement rather than obedience to him, despite stress of torture, neither recked she aught of that which he lavished to her of monies and raiment, jewels and ornaments. When the king had made an end of his story, he bade the bystanders spit in the Magian's face and curse him, and they did this. Then he bade cut out his tongue, and on the next day he bade lop off his ears and nose, and pluck out both his eyes. On the 3rd day he bade hew off his hands, and on the 4th his feet. And they ceased not to dismember him, limb after limb, and each member they cast into the fire, after its amputation, before his face, till his soul departed, after he had endured torments of all kinds and fashions. Then the king bade crucify his trunk on the city wall for 3 days, after which he gave orders to burn it, and reduce its ashes to powder, and scatter them abroad in the air. And when this was done, the king summoned the Kazis and the witnesses, and commanded them marry the old king's daughter and her sister to his own sons. So the youths wedded them, after the king had made a bride feast 3 days, and displayed their brides to them from nightfall to day dawn. Then the 2 princes went in unto their brides, and abated their maidenheads, and loved them, and were vouchsafed issue by them. As for the king their sire, he abode with his cousin wife, their mother, that while Allah, to whom belong honor and glory, willed, and they rejoiced in reunion each with other. The kingship endured unto them, and high degree and victory, and the sovereign continued to rule with justice and equity, so that the lieges loved him and prayed for him and for his sons length of life and durance of days. And they lived the most delightsome of existences, till there came to them the destroyer of delights, and severer of societies, the depopulator of palaces, and garnerer of graves. And this is all that hath come down to us of the story of the king and his wife and sons. Nor, continued the wazir, If this story be a solace and a diversion, is it pleasanter or more diverting than the tale of the youth of Khorasan and his mother and sister? When King Shahbakht heard this story, it pleased him, and he bade the minister hie away to his own house. End of section 52.
Section 53 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shreya Sethi. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous, translated by Sir Francis Richard Burton. The 27th night of the month, Part 1. When evening came, the king Shahbakht bade fetch the vizier, so he presented himself before the king, and the king ordered him to tell the tale. So he said, "Hearkening and obedience, give ear, O sovereign, to the tale of Salim, the youth of Khorasan, and Salma, his sister. Know, O king, but Allah alone knoweth his secret purpose, and is versed in the past and the foredone among folk bygone, that there was once, in the parts of Khorasan, a man of its affluent, who was a merchant of the chiefest of the merchants, and was blessed with 2 children, a son and a daughter. He was diligent exceedingly in rearing them, and they were educated with the fairest of education, for he used to teach the boy, who taught his sister all that he learnt, so that, by means of her brother, the damsel became perfect in the knowledge of the traditions of the Prophet and in polite letters. Now the boy's name was Salim, and that of the girl was Salma. When they grew up and were fully grown, their father built them a mansion beside his own, and lodged them apart therein, and appointed them slave girls and servants to tend to them, and assigned to each of them pay and allowances, and all that they needed of high and low, meat and bread, wine, dresses and vessels, and what not else. So Salim and Salma abode in that palace, as they were one soul in 2 bodies, and they used to sleep on one couch and rise a morn with single purpose, while firmly fixed in each one's heart were fond affection and familiar friendship for the other. One night, when the half was spent, as Salim and Salma sat recounting and conversing, they heard a noise on the ground floor. So they looked out from a latticed casement, which gave upon the gate of their father's mansion, and saw a man of fine presence, whose clothes were hidden under a wide cloak. He came straight up to the gate, and laying hold of the door ring, rapped a light rap, whereupon the door opened, and behold, out came their sister, with a lighted taper, and after her their mother, who saluted the stranger and embraced him, saying, "O dearling of my heart and light of mine eyes, and fruit of my vitals, enter." So he went in and shut the door, whilst Salim and Salma abode amazed. The youth turned to the girl and said to her, "O sister mine, how deemest thou of this trouble, and what advice hast thou to offer?" She replied, "O my brother, indeed I know not what I shall say, anent the like of this. But he is not disappointed who divine direction seeketh, nor doth he repent who counsel taketh. One getteth not the better of the traces of burning by haste, and know that this is an affliction that hath descended on us, and a calamity foreordained to us. So we have need of wise rede to do it away, and contrivance which shall wash our shame from our faces." And they ceased not, watching the gate till daybreak, when the young man opened the door, and their mother farewelled him. After which he went his way, and she entered, she and her handmaid. "Harit," said Selim to his sister, "know thou I am resolved to slay this man." And he returned the next night, and I will say to the folk, "He was a robber, and none shall weet that which hath befallen." Then I will address myself to the slaughter of whosoever knoweth what is between the fellow and my mother. But Salma said, I fear lest an thou slay him in our dwelling place, and he be not convicted of robberhood, suspicion and ill fame will revert upon ourselves, and we cannot be assured that he belongeth not to a tribe whose mischief is to be feared, and whose enmity is to be dreaded. And thus wilt thou have fled from hidden shame to open shame, and to disgrace public and abiding? Asked Salim, What then is it thy rede to do? And she answered, Is there no help but thou kill him? Let us not hasten unto slaughter, for that the slaughter of a soul without just cause is a mighty grave matter. When Shahban heard this, he said within himself, By Allah, I have indeed been hasty and reckless in the slaying of women and girls, and Alhamdulillah, lauded be the Lord, who hath occupied me with this damsel from the slaughter of souls, for that the slaughter of souls is a grave matter and a grievous. By the Almighty, if Shah Bakht spare the Wazir, I will assuredly spare Scheherazade. Then he gave ear to the story and heard her say to her sister, Quoth Salma to Salim, Hasten not to slay him, but overthink the matter and consider the issue whereto it may tend. For whoso considereth not of actions, the end hath not fortune to friend. When they arose on the morrow, and busied themselves with contriving how they should turn away their parent from that man, and the mother forefelt mischief from them, for what she saw in their eyes of change, she being wily and keen of wit. So she took precaution for herself against her children, and Salma said to Salim, Thou seest what we have fallen upon through this woman, and very sooth she hath sensed our purpose, and wotteth that we have discovered her secret. So doubtless she will plot against us the like of that which we plot for her, for indeed up to now she had concealed her affair, and from this time forth she will become harsh to us. Wherefore, methinks there is a thing forewritten to us, whereof Allah, extolled and exalted be He, knew in His foreknowledge, and wherein He carrieth out His commandments. He asked, What is that? And she answered, It is that we arise, I and thou, and go forth this night from this land, and seek out a town wherein we may wone and witness naught of the doings of yonder traitress. For whoso is absent from the eye is absent from the heart. And quoth one of the poets in the following couplet, 'Tis happiest, best for thee, the place to leave, for then no eye can see, nor heart can grieve. Quoth Salim to her, 'Tis for thee to decide, and right is thy rede. So let us do this, in the name of Allah the Almighty, trusting in Him for guiding and grace. Accordingly they arose, and took the richest of their raiment, and the lightest of that which was in their treasuries of gems and things of price, and gathered together much matter. Then they equipped 10 mules, and hired them servants of other than the people of the country, and Salim bade his sister Salma don man's dress. Now she was the likest of all creatures to him, so that, when she was clad in man's clothing, the folk knew no difference between them. Extolled be the perfection of him, who hath no like. There is no God but He. Then he told her to mount a mare, whilst he himself took another, and they set out under cover of the night. Nor did any of their family or household know of them. So they fared on into Allah's wide world, and gave not over going night and day for a space of 2 months, at the end of which they came to a city on the seashore of the land of Makran, by name Al-Shar, and it is the first city in Sindh. They lighted down within sight of the place, and when they arose in the morning, they saw a populous city, and a goodly, seemly of semblance and great abounding in trees, and rills and fruits and wide of suburbs, which stretched to the neighbouring villages. So the young man said to his sister Salma, Tarry thou here in thy place, till I enter the city and make proof of it and its people, and seek us out a stead which we may buy and whereto we may remove. And it befit us, we will make us a home therein. Otherwise will we take counsel of departing elsewhere. Quoth she, Do this, trusting in the bounty of Allah, to whom belong honor and glory, and in His blessing. Accordingly, he took a belt wherein were 1,000 gold pieces, and girdling it about his waist, entered the city, and ceased not going round about its streets and bazaars, and gazing upon its houses and sitting with those of its citizens, whose aspect showed signs of worth and wealth, till the day was half spent, when he resolved to return to his sister, and said to himself, Needs must I buy what we may eat of ready-cooked food, I and my sister. Hereupon he addressed a man who sold roast meat, and who was clean of person, albeit foul in his way of getting a living, and said to him, Take the price of this dishful, and add thereto of fowls and chickens and what not else is in your market of meats, and sweetmeats and bread, and arrange it in the plates. So the kitchener took the money, and set apart for him what he desired. Then calling a porter, he laid it in the man's crate, and Salim, after paying the price of provisions and porterage in fullest fashion, was about to go away, when the cook said to him, O youth, doubtless thou art a stranger. He replied, Yes, and the other rejoined, 'Tis reported in one of the traditions that the apostle said, Loyal admonition is a part of religion, and the wise and ware have declared counsel is of the characteristics of true believers. And verily, that which I have seen of thy ways pleaseth me, and I would fain give thee a warning. Rejoined Salim, Speak out thy warning, and may Allah strengthen thy purpose. Then said the cook, Know, O my son, that in this our city, when a stranger entereth and eateth of flesh meat and drinketh not old wine upon it, 'tis harmful to him and disturbeth his body with disorders which may be dangerous. Wherefore, an thou have provided thee somewhat of wine, it is well, but if not, haste to procure it ere thou take the meat and carry it away. Quoth Salim, Allah requite thee with weal. Canst thou show me where liquor is sold? And quoth the cook, With me is all thou seekest. The youth asked, Is there a way for me to see it? And the cook sprang up and answered, Pass on. So he entered, and the man showed him somewhat of wine, but he said, I desire better than this. Whereupon he opened a door, and entering, said to Salim, Come in and follow me. Accordingly, Salim followed him till he brought him to an underground chamber, and showed him somewhat of wine that suited him. So he occupied with him looking at it, and taking him unawares, sprang upon him from behind and threw him to the ground and sat upon his breast. Then he drew a knife and set it to his jugular, whereupon there betided Salim that wherewith Allah made him forget all that he had decreed to him, and cried to the cook, Why dost thou this thing? O good fellow, be mindful of the Almighty and fear Him. Seest thou not I am a stranger man, and knowest thou not I have behind me a forlorn defenceless woman? Wherefore wilt thou kill me? Quoth the kitchener, Needs must I kill thee, so I may take thy money. And quoth Salim, Take my money, but kill me not, neither enter into sin against me, and do with me kindness. For indeed the taking of my coin is more venial than the taking of my life. The cook replied, This is nonsense. Thou canst not deliver thyself herewith, O youth, because in thy deliverance is my destruction. Cried Salim, I swear to thee and give thee the bond of Allah, to whom belong honor and glory, and his covenant which he took of his prophets, that I will not discover thy secret, no, never. But the kitchener replied, Away, away! Alas, alas, to this there is no path. However, Salim ceased not to conjure him, and humble himself to him, and weep, while the cook persisted in his intent to cut his throat. Then he shed tears and recited these couplets. Haste not to that thou dost desire, for haste is still unblessed. Be merciful to men, as thou on mercy reckonest. For no hand is there, but the hand of God is over it, and no oppressor but shall be with worse than he oppressed. Quoth the kitchener, There is no help save that I slay thee, O fellow, for an I spare thee, I shall myself be slain. But Salim said, O my brother, I will advise thee somewhat other than this. Asked the cook, What is it? Say it and be brief ere I cut thy throat. And Salim answered, Suffer me to live and keep me as thy Mameluke, thy white slave, and I will work at a craft of the skilled workmen, wherefrom there shall result to thee every day 2 dinars. Quoth the kitchener, What is the craft? And quoth Salim, The cutting of gems and jewels. When the man heard this, he said to himself, 'Twill do me no hurt if I imprison him and fetter him and bring him that whereat he may work. And he tell truth, I will let him live, and if he prove a liar, I will kill him. So he took a pair of stout shackles, and fitting them on Salim's legs, jailed him within his house and charged a man to guard him. Then he asked him what tools he needed for work, and Salim described to him whatso he required, and the cook went out from him a while and brought him all he wanted. Then Salim sat down and wrought at his craft, and he used every day to earn 2 dinars, and this was his wont and custom with the kitchener, who fed him not but half his fill. Thus befell it with Salim, but returning to his sister Salma, she awaited him till the last of the day, yet he appeared not, and she expected him a 2nd day, and a 3rd, and a 4th, yet there came no news of him. So she wept and beat hand on breast and bethought her of her affair, and her strangerhood and the disappearance of her brother. And she improvised these couplets. Salam to you, would I could see you again, to the joy of my heart and the coolth of my eyes. You are naught but my hope and the whole of my hope, and under my ribs love for you buried lies. She tarried on this wise awaiting him till the end of the month, but no tidings of him came, nor happened she upon aught of his trace, wherefore she was troubled with exceeding trouble, and sending her servants hither and thither in search of him, abode in the sorest that might be of chagrin and concern. When it was the beginning of the new month, she arose in the morning and bidding one of her men cry her brother throughout the city, sat to receive visits of condolence. Nor was there any in town but made act of presence to condole with her, and they were all sorry for her, doubting not her being a man. When 3 nights had passed over her with their days of the 2nd month, she despaired of him and her tears never dried. Then she resolved to take up her abode in that city, and making choice of a dwelling removed thither. The folk resorted to her from all parts, to sit with her and hear her speech and witness her fine breeding, nor was it but a little while ere the king died, and the folk differed anent whom they should invest with the kingship after him, so that civil war was like to befall them. However, the men of the judgment and the folk of understanding and the people of experience directed them to crown the youth who had lost his brother, for that they still held Salma to be a man. They consented to this one and all, and betaking themselves to her, offered the kingship. She refused, but they were urgent with her, till she consented, saying within herself, My sole desire in the kingship is to find my brother. Then they seated her upon the throne of the realm, and set the crown upon her head, after which she undertook the business of governance and ordinance of affairs, and they rejoiced in her with the utmost joy. On such wise fared it with her, but as for Salim, he abode with the cook a whole year's space, bringing him 2 dinars a day, and when his affair waxed longsome, the man felt for him and pitied him. Presently he promised him release on condition that if he let him go, he should not discover his ill deeds to the Sultan, for that it was his wont now and then to entrap a man and carry him to his house and slay him and take his money and cook his flesh and give it to the folk to eat. So he asked him, O youth, wilt thou that I release thee from this thy misery, on condition that thou be reasonable and never discover aught of thine affair? Salim answered, I will swear to thee by whatsoever oath thou wilt administer, that I will keep thy secret, and will not speak one syllable anent thee, what while I am in the land of the living. Quoth the kitchener, I purpose to send thee forth with my brother, and cause thee voyage with him over the sea, on condition that thou be to him a Mameluke, a boughten slave, and when he cometh to the land of Hind, he shall sell thee, and thus wilt thou be delivered from prison and slaughter. And quoth Salim, "'Tis well, be it as thou sayest, may Allah the Most High requite thee with weal." Accordingly, the cook equipped his brother, and freighting him a craft, stowed therein a cargaison of merchandise. Then he committed Salim to him, and they set out with the ship. The Lord decreed them safety, so that they arrived at the first city of Hind, which is known as Al-Mansura, and cast anchor there. Now the king of that city had died, leaving a daughter and a widow, who, being the quickest-witted of women and cleverest of the folk of her day, gave out that the girl was a boy, so that the kingship might be established unto them. The troops and the emirs gave credit that the case was as she avouched, and that the princess was a prince. Wherefore they obeyed her bidding, and the queen mother took order for the matter, and used to dress the girl in man's habit, and seat her on the throne of the kingship, so that the lords of the land and the chief officers of the realm used to go into her, and salute her, and do her service and depart, nothing doubting but she was a boy. After this fashion they fared for months and years, and the queen mother ceased not to do thus, till the cook's brother came to the town in his ship, and with him Salim. He landed with the youth and displayed him for sale to the queen, who, when she saw him, prognosticated well of him. Presently she bought him, and was kind to him, and entreated him with honour. Then began she to prove him in his moral paths, and make essay of him in his affairs. And she found in him all that is in kings' sons of understanding and fine breeding, and good manners and qualities. Thereupon she sent for him in private, and said to him, "I am minded to do thee a service, so thou canst keep a secret." He promised her all that she desired, and she discovered to him her mystery in the matter of her daughter, saying, "I will marry thee to her, and commit to thee the governance, and constitute thee king and ruler over this city." He thanked her, and promised to carry out all she should order him, and she said to him, "Go forth to such an one of the neighbouring provinces privily." So he went forth, and on the morrow she made ready loads and gear and gifts, and bestowed on him abundant substance, all of which they loaded on the backs of baggage camels. Then she gave out among the folk that the nephew of the king, the son of his brother, was come, and bade the grandees and troops go forth to meet him in a body. She also decorated the city in his honour, and the kettle drums of good tidings beat for him, whilst all the king's household went out, and dismounting before him, escorted him into and lodged him with the queen mother in the palace. Then she bade the headmen of the state attend his assembly, so they obeyed, and witnessed of his breeding and good parts that which amazed them, and made them forget the breeding of the kings who had preceded him. When they were grown to like him, the queen mother began sending privily for the emirs and councils one by one, and swearing them to conceal her project, and when she was assured of their discretion, she discovered to them that the king had left naught save a daughter, and that she had done this only that she might continue the kingship in his family, and that the rule should not go forth from them. After which she informed them that she was minded to marry her daughter with her nephew, the newcomer, and that he should be the holder of the kingship. They approved her proposal, and when she had discovered the secret to the last of them, and assured herself of their aid, she published the news abroad and threw off all concealment. Then she sent for the qazis and assessors, who drew up the contract of marriage between Salim and the princess, and they lavished gifts upon the soldiery, and overwhelmed them with largesse. The bride was incontinently carried in procession to the young man, and the kingship was established to him. They tarried after this fashion a whole year, when Salim said to the queen mother, "Know that my life is not pleasing to me, nor can I abide with you in consent, till I get me tidings of my sister, and learn how her affair hath ended, and how she hath fared after me. So I will go forth, and be absent from you a year's space. Then will I return to you, inshallah, and it please God the Most High, and I win of this that which I hope." Quoth she, "I will not trust to thy word, but will go with thee, and help thee to whatso thou wishest, and further thee myself therein." Then she took a ship, and loaded it with all manner things of price, goods and monies, and the like. Furthermore, she appointed one of the viziers, a man in whom she trusted for his conduct and contrivance, to rule the realm, saying to him, "Abide in governance a full year, and ordain all thou needest." Presently, the queen mother and her daughter and son-in-law Salim went down to the ship and sailed on till they made the land of Makran. Their arrival there befell at the last of the day, so they nighted in their ship, and when the morn was near to dawn, the young king landed, that he might go to the hammam, and walked marketwards. As he drew near the baths, the cook met him on the way and knew him, so he seized him and pinioning him straitly carried him to his house, where he clapped the old fetters to his feet and cast him back into the former place of durance vile. Salim, finding himself in that sorry condition, and considering that wherewith he was afflicted with tribulation and the reverses of his fair fortune, in that he had been a king, and was now returned to fetters and prison and hunger, wept and groaned and lamented, and improvised these couplets. My God, no patience now can aid afford, strait is my breast, O thou of lords the Lord. My God, who in resource you like thine hath force, and thou the subtle dost my case record. End of section 53. Recording by Scheherazade. Section 54 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Scheherazade. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 27th night of the month, Part 2. On this wise fared it with Salim, but as regards his wife and her mother, when she awoke in the morning and her husband returned not to her with break of dawn, she forebode all manner of calamity, and straightway arising, she dispatched her servants and all who were with her in quest of her spouse. But they happened not on any trace of him, nor could they hear aught of his news. So she bethought herself concerning the case, and plained and wept and groaned, and sighed and blamed fortune the fickle, bewailing the changes of time, and reciting these couplets. God keep the days of love delight, how passing sweet they were, how joyous and how solaceful was life in them while ere. Would he not, who sundered us upon the parting day, how many a body hath he slain, how many a bone laid bare. Sans fault of mine, my blood and tears he shed, and beggared me. Of him I love, yet for himself gained not thereby whatever. When she had made an end of her verses, she considered her affair, and said within herself, By Allah, all these things have betided by the predestination of Almighty Allah and His decree, and this upon the forehead was written in lines. Then she landed and walked on, till she came to a spacious place, and an open, where she asked of the folk, and hired a house. Thither she transported forthright all that was in the ship of goods, and sending after brokers, sold all that was with her. Presently she took part of the price, and began inquiring of the folk, so haply she might send out tidings of the lost one. And she addressed herself to lavishing alms, and preparing medicines for the sick, clothing the naked, and watering the ground of the forlorn. She ceased not so doing a whole year, and little by little she sold off her goods, and gave charitable gifts to the sick and sorry, whereby her report was rooted abroad in the city, and the folk abounded in her praise. All this while Salim lay in fetters and strait prison, and melancholy gat hold of him by reason of that whereinto he had fallen of this affliction. At last, when care waxed on him, and calamity grew longsome, he fell sick of a sore sickness. Then the kitchener, seeing his plight, and verily he was like to sink for much suffering, loosed him from the fetters, and bringing him forth of the prison, committed him to an old woman, who had a nose the bigness of a guglet, and bade her nurse him, and medicine him, and serve him, and entreat him kindly, so haply he might be made whole of that his sickness. Accordingly, the old woman took him, and carrying him to her lodging, began nursing him and giving him to eat and drink. And when he was delivered of that torment, he recovered from the malady which had afflicted him. Now the old woman had heard from the folk of the lady who gave alms to the sick, and indeed the news of her bounties reached the poor and rich. So she arose, and bringing out Salim to the door of her house, laid him upon a mat and wrapped him in an Aba gown, and sat over against him. Presently it befell that the lady passed by them, and the old woman seeing her rose to her, and blessed her, saying, O my daughter, O thou to whom belong goodness and beneficence, and charity and alms doing, know that this young man is a foreigner, and indeed lack and lice and hunger and nakedness and cold slay him. When the lady heard this, she gave her alms, and presented her with a part of that which was with her. And indeed her charitable heart inclined to Salim, but she knew him not for her spouse. The old woman received the alms from her, and carrying it to Salim, took part for herself, and with the rest bought him an old shirt, in which she clad him, after she had stripped him of that he had on. Then she threw away the frock she had taken from off him, and arising forthwith, washed his body of that which was thereon of grime, and scented him with somewhat of scent. She also bought chickens, and made him broth. So he ate, and his life returned to him, and he abode with her in all comfort of condition till the morrow. Next morning the old woman said to Salim, When the lady cometh to thee, arise and buss her hand, and say to her, I am a homeless man, and indeed cold and hunger kill me, so haply she may give thee somewhat that thou mayest expend upon thy case. And he answered, To hear is to obey. Then she took him by the hand, and carrying him without her house, seated him at the door. And as he sat, behold, the lady came up to him, whereupon the old woman rose to her, and Salim kissed her hand, and looking at her the while blessed her. But when he saw her, he knew her for his wife. So he shrieked and shed tears and groaned and plained, at which she came up to him and threw herself upon him. For indeed she knew him with all knowledge, even as he knew her. So she hung to him and embraced him, and called to her serving men and attendants, and those who were about her, and they took him up and carried him forth of that stead. When the old woman saw this, she cried out to the cook within the house, and he said to her, Fare thou before me. So she forewent him, and he ran after her, and ceased not running till he overtook the party, and seizing Salim, exclaimed, What aileth you to take my slave lad? Whereupon the queen cried out at him, saying, Know that this is my husband, whom I had lost. And Salim also cried out, saying, Mercy, mercy, I appeal to Allah and to the Sultan against this Satan. Therewith a world of folk straightway gathered together, and loud rose the cries and the clamours between them. But the most part of them said, Carry their case up to the Sultan. So they referred the matter to the king, who was none other than Salim's sister Salma. Then they repaired to the palace, and the dragoman went into Salma and said to her, O king of the age, here is a Hindi woman who cometh from the land of Hind, and she hath laid hands on a servant, a young man, claiming him as her husband, who hath been lost to her these 2 years, and she journeyed not hither save for his sake, and in very sooth these many days she hath done alms deeds in thy city. And here is a fellow, a kitchener, who declareth that the young man is his slave. When the queen heard these words, her vitals quivered, and she groaned from a grieving heart, and called to mind her brother and that which had betided him. Then she bade those around her bring them between her hands, and when she saw them, she knew her brother and was about to cry aloud, but her reason restrained her. Yet she could not prevent herself rising up and sitting down. At last, however, she enforced her soul to patience and said to them, "Let each and every of you acquaint me with his case." So Salim came forward and kissing the ground before the king, lauded him and related to him his story from first to last, until the time of their coming to that city, he and his sister, telling him how he had entered the place and had fallen into the hands of the cook, and that which had betided him, and whatso he had suffered from him of beating and collars, of fetters and pinioning, till the man had made him his brother's Mameluke, a boughten slave, and how the brother had sold him in Hind, and he had become king by marrying the princess, and how life was not lovesome to him till he should foregather with his sister, and now the same cook had fallen in with him a second time, and had pinioned and fettered him. Brief he acquainted her with that which had betided him of sickness and sorrow for the space of a whole year. When he had made an end of his speech, his wife straightways came forward and told her story, from incept to termination, how her mother bought him from the cook's partner, and the people of the kingdom came under his rule, nor did she cease telling till she came in her history to that city, and acquainted the king with the manner of her meeting her husband. When she had made an end of her adventure, the kitchener exclaimed, "Alack! What befalls us from lying rascals? By Allah, O king, this woman lieth against me, for this youth is my rearling, and he was born of one of my slave girls. He fled from me, and I found him again." When the queen heard the last of the talk, she said to the cook, "The decree between you shall not be save in accordance with justice." Then she dismissed all those who were present, and turning to her brother said to him, "Indeed, thy truth is established with me, and the sooth of thy speech, and praised be Allah who hath brought about reunion between thee and thy wife. So now, be gone with her to thy country, and cease to seek thy sister Salma, and depart in peace." But hearing this, Salim replied, "By Allah, by the might of the all-knowing king, I will not turn back from seeking my sister till I die, or I find her, inshallah." Then he called his sister to mind, and impoverished from a heart disappointed, troubled, afflicted these couplets. "O thou, who blamest me for my heart, in anger twitting me, hadst tasted what my heart did taste, thou wouldst be pitying me. By Allah, O my childer, for my sister leave, leave my heart to mourn its grief and feel the woes befitting me. Indeed I grew to hold her dear privily, publicly, and in my bosom bides a pang at no time quitting me, and in my vitals burns a flame that never was equalled by the fire of hell, and blazeth high to death committing me." Now when his sister Salma heard what he said, she could no longer restrain her soul, but threw herself upon him, and discovered to him her case. When he knew her, he threw himself upon her swooning awhile, after which he came to himself and cried, "Lauded be the Lord, the bountiful, the beneficent." Then they plained each to other of that they had suffered from the pangs of parting, whilst Salim's wife wondered at this, and Salma's patience and endurance pleased her. So she saluted her with the salam, and thanked her for her fair boons, saying, "By Allah, O my lady, all that we are in of gladness never befell us, save by thy blessing. So praised be Allah who deigned vouchsafe us thy sight." Then they tarried all three, Salma, Salim, and his wife, in joy and happiness and delight 3 days, veiled from the folk. And it was bruited abroad in the city that the king had found his brother, who was lost for many a year, and had saved him from the cook's house. On the fourth day, all the troops and the lieges assembled together to see the king, and standing at his gate, craved leave to enter. Salma bade admit them, so they entered and paid her royal suit and service, and gave her joy of her brother's safe return. She bade them do homage to Salim, and they consented and sware fealty to him, after which they kept silence awhile, so they might hear what the king should command. Then quoth Salma, Ho ye gathering of soldiers and subjects, ye wot that ye forced me willy-nilly to accept the kingship, and besought me thereof, and I consented to your desires, anent my being raised to rule over you. And I did this against my will, for I would have you know that I am a woman, and that I disguised myself, and donned man's dress, so peradventure my case might be concealed when I lost my brother. But now Allah hath deigned reunite me with my brother, and it is no longer lawful to me that I be king and sultan over the people, and I a woman, because there is no sultanate for women, whenas men are present. For this reason, an it suit you, set my brother on the throne of the kingdom, for this is he, and I will busy myself with the worship of Allah the Most High and thanksgiving to him for my reunion with my brother. Or, an ye prefer it, take your kingship and make whom ye will ruler and liege lord thereof. Upon this the folk all cried out, saying, We accept him to king over us. And they did him suit and service and gave him joy of the kingship. So the preachers preached the sermon in his name, and the court poets praised him. And he lavished largesse upon the soldiery and the suit, and overwhelmed them with favours, and was prodigal to the rewards of justice and equity, with goodly policy and polity. When he had effected this much of his effect, he caused bring forth the cook and his household to the divan, but spared the old woman who had nursed him, because she had been the cause of his deliverance. When all assembled without the town, and he tormented the cook and those who were with him with all manner torments, after which he did him to die by the foulest of deaths, and burning him with fire, scattered his ashes far and wide in the air. After this, Salim abode in the governance, invested with the sultanate, and ruled the people a whole year, when he returned to Al-Mansura, and sojourned there another year. And he and his wife ceased not to go from city to city, and tarry in this a year and that a year, till he was vouchsafed children, and they grew up, whereupon he appointed him of his sons, who was found fitting to be his deputy in one kingdom, and he ruled in the other, and he lived, he and his wife and children, what while Almighty Allah willed. Nor, continued the Vizier, O King of the age, is this story rarer or stranger than the King of Hind and his wronged and envied minister. When the king heard this, his mind was occupied, and he bade the Vizier hie to his own house. End of section 54. Recording by Shreya Sethi.
Section 55 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by phone. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. The 28th and last night of the month. When the evening evened, the king summoned the minister and bade him tell the story of the king of Hind and his wazir. So he said, Hearkening and obedience, give ear, O auspicious king, to the tale of the king of Hind and his wazir. There was once in the Hindland a king illustrious of worth, endowed with understanding and policy, and his name was Shah Bakht. He had a minister, a godly man and a sagacious, right prudent in rede, conformable to him in governance, and just in judgment. For which cause his enviers were many, and many were the hypocrites who sought faults in him and set snares for him, so that they insinuated into King Shahbakt's eyes hatred against him, and sowed in his heart despite towards him. And plot followed plot, and their rancor waxed until the king was brought to arrest him, and lay him in jail, and to confiscate his wealth, and degrade him from his degree. When they knew that there was left him no possession for which the king might lust, they feared lest the sovereign release him, by the influence of the vizier's good counsel upon the king's heart, and he returned to his former case, so should their machinations be marred, and their degrees degraded, for that they knew that the king would need whatso he had known from that man, nor would forget aught wherewith he was familiar in him. Now it came to pass that a certain person of perverted belief found a way to the adorning of falsehood with a semblance of fair seeming, and there proceeded from him that whereby the hearts of the folk were occupied, and their minds were corrupted by his lying tales. For that he made use of Indian quiddities, and forged them into proof for the denial of the Maker, the Creator, extolled be his might, and exalted be he, and glorified and magnified above the speech of the deniers. He avouched that it is the planets which order all worldly affairs, and he set down 12 mansions to 12 zodiacal signs, and made each sign 30 degrees, after the number of the days of the month, so that in 12 mansions there are 360, after the number of the days of the year. And he wrought a work, wherein he lied and was an infidel, and denied the deity, be he forever blessed. Then he laid hold of the king's heart, and the enviers and haters aided him against the minister, and won the royal favor, and corrupted his intent against the wazir, so that he got of him that which he got, and at last his lord banished him, and thrust him away. By such means the wicked man obtained that which he sought of the minister, and the case was prolonged, till the affairs of the kingdom became disordered, by dint of ill government, and the most part of the king's reign fell off from him, and he came nigh unto ruin. On this wise he was assured of the loyalty of his whilom sagacious wazir, and the excellence of his ordinance, and the rectitude of his rede. So he sent after him, and brought him and the wicked man before him, and summoning to his presence the lords of his land, and the chiefs of his chieftainship, gave them leave to talk and dispute, and forbade the wicked man from his perverted belief. Then arose that wise minister, and skillful, and praised Allah Almighty, and lauded him and glorified him, and hallowed him and attested his unity, and disputed with the miscreant, and overcame him and silenced him. Nor did he cease from him till he compelled him to make confession of repentance from that which he had misbelieved. Therewith King Shahbakt rejoiced with exceeding great joy, and cried, Praise be to the Lord who hath saved me from this man, and hath preserved me from the loss of my kingship and my prosperity. So the affair of the wazir returned to order and stablishment, and the king restored him to his place, and raised him to higher rank. Lastly, he assembled the folk who had striven against him, and destroyed them all, to the last man. And how like, continued the wazir, is this story to that of myself and King Shahbakt, with regard to that which befell me of the changing of the king and his crediting others against me. But now is the fairness of my fashion fulfilled in thine eyes, for that Allah Almighty hath inspired thee with wisdom, and endowed thee with longanimity and patience to hear from me whatso he allotted to those who forewent us, till he hath shown forth my innocence, and made manifest unto thee the truth. For lo and behold, the days are now past, wherein it was declared to the king that I should labor for the loss of my soul, that is, within the month. And look ye, the probation time is gone by, and past is the season of evil, and it hath ceased by the protection of the king and his good fortune. Then he bowed his head and was silent. When King Shahbakht heard his wazir's speech, he was abashed before him and confounded, and he marvelled at the gravity of his intellect and his long suffering. So he sprang up to him and embraced him, and the minister kissed his feet. Then the king called for a costly robe of honor and cast it over Al-Ravan, and honored him with the highmost honor, and showed him a special favor, and restored him to his degree and wazirat. Furthermore, he imprisoned those who had devised his destruction with lies and leasing, and gave him full leave and license to pass judgment upon the interpreter who had expounded to him the dream. So the wazir abode in the ordering of the realm until death came to them. And this, added Shahrazad, is all, O King of the age, that hath come down to us of King Shahbakht and his wazir. End of section 55. Recording by phone. Section 56 of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by phone. The Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton. Shahrazad and Shahryar. As for King Shahryar, he wondered at Shahrazad with the utmost wonder, and drew her near to his heart of his abounding affection for her. And she was magnified in his eyes, and he said within himself, By Allah, the like of this is not deserving of slaughter, for indeed the time favoureth us not with her equal. By the Almighty, I have been reckless of mine affair, and had not the Lord overcome me with his ruth, and put this one at my service so she might recount to me instances manifest, and cases truthful, and admonitions goodly, and traits edifying, such as should restore me to the right road, I had come to ruin. Wherefore to Allah be the praise herefore, and I beseech the Most High to make my end with her like that of the Wazir and Shahbakht. Then sleep overcame the king, and glory be unto him who sleepeth not. When it was the 930th night, Shahrazad said, O king, there is present in my thought a tale which treateth of women's trickery, and wherein is a warning to whoso will be warned, and an admonishment to whoso will be admonished, and whoso hath sight and insight. But I fear lest the hearing of this belittle me with the liege lord, and lower my degree in his esteem. Yet I hope that this will not be, because 'tis a rare tale. Women are indeed mischief makers. Their craft and their cunning may not be told, nor may their wiles be known. While men enjoy their company, and are not instant to uphold them in the right way, neither are they vigilant over them with all vigilance, but relish their society, and take whatso is winsome, and regard not that which is other than this. Indeed, they are like unto the crooked rib, which, an thou go about to straighten, thou distortest it, and which, an thou persist in straightening, thou breakest it. So it behoveth the wise man to be silent concerning them. Thereupon quoth Dinarzad, O sister mine, bring forth that which is with thee, and that which is present to thy mind, of the story concerning the guile of women and their wiles, and have no fear lest this lessen thee with the king. For that women are, like jewels, of all kinds and colours. When a gem falleth into the hand of an expert, he keepeth it for himself, and leaveth all beside it. Eke he preferreth some of them over others, and in this he is like the potter, who filleth his kiln with all the vessels he hath moulded, and under them kindleth his fire. When the baking is done, and he taketh out that which is in the kiln, he findeth no help for it, but that he must break some of them, whilst others are what the folk need, and whereof they make use, while yet others there are which return to be as they were. So fear thou not, nor deem it a grave matter to adduce that which thou knowest of the craft of women, for that in this is profit for all folk. Then said Shahrazad, Then relate, O King, but Allah alone knoweth the secret things, the tale of... End of section 56. Recording by phone. End of the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night, Volume 11, by Anonymous. Translated by Richard Francis Burton.